Hey everybody, can you hear me or am I quiet? Am I normal? Am I loud? Normal, not quiet compared to the audio or the song? You're a little quiet compared to the song. All right, well, welcome on in everybody. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the Central Committee stream with your host Mike from PA. We've got a overcast day, so the light level is low in the room. My 2-year-old was jamming out to Mike Was Fucking Right. She locked the Hutcho's $1,500 part. True. Hey Malhangs dog, welcome back. Thanks for the resub. All right everybody, welcome on in. Chat and Mike, have a good weekend. Hey, what's up, brother? Did you hear that they're trying to smear Plattner as not working class because his grandfather was an architect and he went to a prep school? It's remarkable how similar liberalism is to the Red Scare. You know what I mean? It's so remarkable how similar somebody like the instincts of somebody like, say, Marxism is to liberal centrist consultants. It's almost like they're the same type of person. Also, like the idea that the New York Times cares that someone's not working class is so funny. Oysterman veteran prep school alum, a Senate candidate's complex class story. I must have missed the part where he got like a job in dad's architecture firm, right? Like that's the thing about nepotism, right? Nepotism is literally like I showed you that. Look at all of the columnists and the New York Times. Like we specifically talked about Russ Douthat the other day. His like grandfather was a governor and he was like a multi-millionaire prep school, $60,000 a year tuition high school he went to. I mean, it just never stopped. The thing that you got to understand is that every interesting Lisa Lehrer and Katie Gluck. Wonder where they're from. I was the reporter covering Ted Cruz for Politico. Wow, she's a Jendelson reposter. She likes the I just do a quick scroll of her shit and it's like Adam Jendelson, if you guys know who that is. He is the Fetterman staffer who's trying to set up the anti-left think tank. Amazing. Josh Shapiro, majority Dems. This is centrism. Here she is retweeting AOC endorsing. I mean, maybe she just retweets all. Stephen A. Smith. I'm not gonna say it. Interesting. Oh wow. Katie Gluck is co-president of Students for Israel. Oh my god, I can't believe it. Wow. Another Israeli spy. Damn. She just wants you to know that Graham Plattner is not really working class. Students from NU were recognized nationally with Activist of the Year award from AIPAC, one of the nation's largest pro-Israel lobbying organizations. AIPAC President David Victor said NU students emerged as a valuable asset to America's pro-Israel community this year. Comments were disabled on this article due to violations of our comment policy. Wow, I can't believe the AIPAC Activist of the Year award. I fucking honestly, chat, I should have been a counterintelligence agent, you know, in the socialist America, because I have this wavelength. I can just pick it up. Whenever there's an intelligence agent, it just wavelengths. I'm like, what is this? I look at that article and I don't see the arguments because they're nonsense, right? And I can just see through it. And then I'm like, Is she cited in here? Daily staffer Katie Gluck is co-president of Students for Israel. Damn, that's crazy. If you want to know how to get hired at the New York Times, it seems like there's a certain group of people that know how to get the inside track. All you have to do is be like a big Zionist, and then bam, you're going to get hired to cover national politics right out of college. Isn't that amazing? You know, you go to college and then bam, you're hired in DC to be the political reporter, and then bam, you're on the Ted Cruz campaign. It's fucking amazing. Isn't that crazy? Right out of high school, you're a national political reporter. Wow. That's amazing. What talent she has. I like, honest to God, chat. And man, you won't believe the same thing happened to me and the reporter who wrote that article for the LA what is it, LA Times? I don't even remember who reads those pieces of shit. Man, that's crazy. You wouldn't believe it. Same thing. I guess the Students for Israel is just a really that's where all the most talented journalists want to join. They can't help it. They just really love Israel. If you're really good at journalism, you just really love Israel. I mean, what could you, it's just a whoops-a-doops-a-daisy. I guess she doesn't post about, why isn't she posting her own article? I want to quote tweet you, Katie. What happened? Katie, no posts? I want to quote tweet you. National political reporter of the New York Times. The national political reporter. Wow. Isn't that amazing? So humble. And so young too. I mean, we're the same age. We're the same age, and she is a national political reporter. I wonder if there was anything there that kind of like got her an inside track. Didn't one of the writers? All of the writers. Hey, anonymous user. Thank you for gifting 25 subs. I'm sorry for getting locked in on this because I'm like, at a certain point, it's not like this. I can only do so much, right? Like, anti-Semitism is one of the most vile bigotries that exists in our society. But there is an effort among Zionists like Katie Gluck to equate Judaism with Zionism, it makes my argument sound ridiculous. It really does. It's like, what the fuck is this? I mean, this is a story that has 3 authors. That he is an oyster. His grandfather was an architect. I mean, it's just crazy. I wonder if Lisa was also a student for Israel. I'm gonna go ahead and say she probably was. I mean, she has quite the resume. I mean, Harvard, Penn, and Columbia. So I mean, her resume is like, okay, you understand why this person at least is like working for the New York Times as a national political reporter. But the North, why? But that's weird. I want to see Jewish safety. Mamdani and Cuomo clash again on Jewish safety. You don't say, Lisa. Wow. You're really worried about Jewish safety with Zoran Mamdani. Any follow-ups? On Israel, progressive Jews feel abandoned by their left-wing allies. Oh, do they? Do progressive Jews feel abandoned by their left-wing allies? Is that right? Have you considered that you're not a progressive if you support an ethno-state committing a genocide? Maybe maybe you're not progressive if you don't believe in human rights. Have you considered that Arabs and Muslims are human beings that have equal rights as you, Lisa? Jewish leaders and voters said they were taken aback to discover that many of their ideological allies saw them as oppressors who deserve blame following the Israel attacks. I am in such a state of despair. In my generation, we have been warned how quickly people would turn on us, and we just thought, no way. Here she is, another article she wrote. For Democrats, crisis in Israel could be a unifying force. The party's traditional support for Israel has been tested in recent years by a vocal liberal wing, but the attacks in Israel could allow it to bridge the divide. Good prediction. Good prediction, Lisa. Comments from more liberal in recent years, the Democratic Party's traditional support for Israel has been tested by a vocal liberal wing, which has called for limiting American military and financial support. But as the full scale of atrocities of Hamas have become clear, these voices have been largely constrained to the fringes of party politics. Comments from more liberal members, including Ayanna Pressley and Cori Bush, calling for an immediate ceasefire and de-escalation within hours of the initial attack by Hamas on civilians, were widely condemned by the party. Even the White House joined in, with Karine Jean-Pierre, President Biden's press secretary, describing comments on the ceasefire as repugnant and disgraceful. What is critical for us is to not lapse into moral equivocation, said Representative Jake Auchincloss. I mean, chat, I'm struggling here. I'm struggling here because it's like, does anyone find if Lisa was a member of her college's Students for Israel APAC of the Year activist or whatever the fuck? Because it's so odd to me that this is wow. What could you say? Oh, did she write for Times of Israel? Oh, damn. Well, would you look at that? Oh, did she work for? I mean, maybe this is just republished though, right? Are you sure she actually wrote for Times of Israel? They might have just published this from The Wire, right? Yeah, see? She might have worked for The Wire. So that's not totally true. Before we say yeah, she's Israeli. He's gay. He's an observant Jew. His comedy career is booming. Okay, guys. JB Pritzker. Wow, you know it's gosh, you know, like I'm gonna have to close this. Because wow. Trump is very bad. Anti-Semitism, we don't like it. It's bad. Anti-Semitism, bad. What the fuck? I mean, it's crazy that like the two reporters that are attacking him for not being a working class because his grandfather was an architect are both extremely active in the pro-Israel movement. And their stories seem shaped around, you know, spreading ideas that Zoran Mamdani and any critic of Israel is some sort of like bigot. Isn't that fucking weird? For El Said, they want to take him down a peg on the elite ladder. For Plattner, they want to move him up a few. Now that they're surging in polls, suddenly face campaigns to strip them. Yes, of course, chat. You know how I talk about ethos, logos, and pathos? This is ethos attacks because they don't want to talk about the ideas or the arguments. So they got to attack credibility. This is all you'll ever see when people talk about me or Hasan or any of these people. It's always you can't talk to them because they're the worst. They're the bigots. They, you know, they hate Israel. So therefore they're anti-Semitic, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, everybody fucking reporter is an Israel activist who's clearly compromised. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Again, we are intractably opposed to anti-Semitism. Jeez, oh man. At this, the way Zionists are trying to like wrap Jewish identity with Israel while Israel is committing a genocide is fucking insane. And now you see why people like Nick Fuentes are on the rise, right? And how dangerous it's going to be if anti-Semitism, like if it breaks through, it's going to break through on the right, obviously, because that's what they believe. They believe in ethnic supremacy and nationalism. Of course, anti-Semitism is going to break through on the right. These are the same people who would lose your mind if you didn't say Dr. Joe Biden. That's so true. I mean, El Said being an MD, PhD. Spectre of Robespierre, I totally get what you're saying, but that's not. The whole point of the right is to use fear to override logic. Hatred and scapegoatism is their tools. Of course! Which is why AOC needs to run an explicitly anti-Zionist campaign. You're 100% right. Of course she does. That's my main worry. Like, I don't think people criticizing AOC are wrong to be concerned about her not being anti-Zionist enough. I think they're onto something, quite frankly. I think it's incredibly dangerous for her to do this liberal Zionist shit that opens up a huge opportunity to get outflanked. And of course, the left is self-conscious about bigotry, so we're always trying to distance ourselves from anti-Semitism. But, like, goddamn, dude. The pro-rape rally in the United States of America. There's really nothing more to say. Like, if you want to become a national political reporter, be president of your Students for Israel. Did I typo? I'll fix it. Oh, right now. Sorry. Right out of college. I don't know why I said now. Alrighty, let's move on to something else that's a little bit more interesting, chat. Sorry for malding there, but I was just like, you know, it's so obvious, man. It's so obvious who the Israeli agents are. And there's a lot of them. Unfortunately, there are a lot of Israeli agents, especially in the political space, because they're trying to control Americans' perceptions of their state, like, obviously. And it's just, what could you even say, right? Was that on the agenda today, or did I studlock us? No, you definitely studlocked me with the he's not working class. And I was like, who wrote this? And then, you know, we look into the two authors of the piece, and they are co-president of Students for Israel. And then we have, you know, let's just say someone who is pushing the idea that Israel being attacked would be useful for marginalizing. Like, guys, I almost don't even want to touch this story. You know, like, it's something Sam Cedar needs to cover. All right, chat. So it looks like China completely mogged the ever-loving fuck out of Donald Trump, and they are planning secret arms sales to Iran.
That's a good transition to what came out of this with regard to Iran. And I just want to remind everybody that after Trump launched the Iran war, without really providing justification, one of the 5D chess rationales was, oh, this is really to hurt China, because they rely on more oil from the Strait of Hormuz. And so even though it's closed and it's a problem for, it's more of a problem for them. And that's what this is really about. I think we can all see now, if that was a thought, that was an incredibly foolish thought, because it is very clear that while, yes, the Iran war is not great for China, they are paying some price for it as well. It is vastly, vastly worse for us. Now, we did get out of this, and I think this is significant. Chinese government saying, you know, in their readout or it coming out of these meetings, that they do not support a toll in the Strait of Hormuz. Everything else, as we covered before, was sort of ambiguous about what they said about Iran. But take a look at this. Put B1 up on the screen. New report for the New York Times says that Chinese firms are plotting secret arms sales to Iran. So according to U.S. officials who were talking to the New York Times.
So in other words, the CIA, by the way, I don't think the CIA, the New York Times, I don't think you understand that most people don't think that there's anything wrong with China selling weapons to Iran, because they're sovereign countries. If you have a problem with China selling arms to Iran, then you have to have a problem with America selling arms to Taiwan. In fact, America selling arms to Taiwan is far more provocative than China selling arms to Iran, because Iran is a sovereign nation, whereas Taiwan, recognized by both the United States and China, is not a sovereign nation. It is a breakaway province. And so we are almost fomenting civil war. It would be like China selling me weapons to start the California Liberation Front or something. That would be a little bit more provocative, right? Hey, Tim. Thanks for the raid, brother.
So keep that in mind in terms of where it's coming from. But I'll just read you a little bit of this. Chinese companies have been discussing arms sales with Iran, plotting to send the weapons through other countries to mask the origins of the military aid. U.S. has gathered intelligence that Chinese companies, Iranian officials have discussed the arms transfers. Not clear how many, if any, arms have been shipped or to what degree Chinese officials have approved the sales. New disclosures likely to intensify pressure on President Trump to raise the issue while he is in Beijing this week. So obviously, this would be a very significant development. We know China's already been assisting Iran. Iran is important to them at this point. And Professor Pape raised with us yesterday, okay, just imagine now all the advanced Chinese tech, like AI tech, also being transferred to Iran, and the way that's only going to further strengthen their position, the Iranians' position as a world power. Yeah. So you've really forced China, Russia, and Iran, you've really forced these three countries together via our own foolish foreign policy.
It is also very interesting with China. You know, one of the things that they've been doing is they actually haven't been importing nearly as much oil as normal. That's one of the reasons why the price of oil actually isn't higher, is I believe that they've cut it by nearly a quarter. And I think one of the reasons that they're doing it is to tell other regional allies, they're like, hey, we've been using a lot of our SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve. They have one of the largest in the world of strategic petroleum. And in effect, we're also getting you a discount by not bidding up the price even higher than where it should be. I also think it's very interesting about all of this stuff that China has access to, which we not previously, he talked about in the 08, 09 area. Now, to say they didn't have spy satellites is ridiculous, but to say that they had cheap spy satellites which they're able to deploy on behalf of others, which then enable a great damage to the U.S., is a very new phenomenon. So if you listen to this, since the beginning of the war, China has given Iran intelligence and access to a spy satellite that has tracked the positions of U.S. forces in the region. They have supplied dual-use components that they need to produce drones, missiles, and other weaponry. Providing these dual-use components like semiconductor sensors, voltage converters, can also be used in civilian manufacturing, draw less scrutiny than arms sales. The reason why I thought that that was really important is let's compare it to the U.S. industrial base. So, for example, the UAE and all of these other countries are buying more THAADs, more Patriots. Well, they have the supply chain to be able to support their industrial base, their civilian base, and to be able to export. We don't even have the industrial base to supply ourselves for 1 year of production, let alone support the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Why do you think the UAE's, doing all these secret shading meetings with Baby? Because they need Iron Dome missiles. They need their drones. I mean, from the U.S. perspective, our supply chain to build this stuff from the ground up, it's impossible. without all of these, it's impossible to produce just what we need, let alone to be able to support the rest of the world. That's what we used to do when we were a global manufacturing powerhouse. In the post-NAFTA era, no. You made an important point earlier about Silicon Valley, but that actually is the great weakness of the U.S. economy. It's the reason why our stock market is higher and our economy sucks. It's because we design things. We're very, very good at high-end design. I mentioned yesterday, this Apple laptop, when you open up the box, designed in Cupertino, right? But where is it manufactured? In Shenzhen, right? It's shipped to me from Vietnam, right? So I track the U.S., the UPS stuff whenever I got it. Well, what does that tell you? The components are here, the design is here. In China, they now have a system where they have both the design and the manufacturing. That's where you're a strong country. This is what happened to Intel and to many of these others. They stripped away their manufacturing capacity. They kept the design because the design is the profits. That's where the money rolls into the banks. But when, push comes to shove, to be Russia, you made a joke about the gas station, and it was, it's kind of true, but does it matter if all you need is gas and bullets? It turns out you don't really need much else. Like when we pulled out McDonald's, they're like, okay, whatever.
Well, and here's what China, Iran, and Russia, all to obviously varying extents, and these are very different countries. But the fact that you had this adversarial relationship with the U.S., either with active sanctions or with the threat of sanctions hanging over the countries, created a real awareness and necessity of a level of self-sufficiency. So even Iran has, they are able to manufacture their own goods, right? They're able to spin up their drones quickly. And certainly, Russia has a large industrial base. China is the largest industrial base in the entire world. And so another technology where they are head and shoulders above us is drones. So
they are above us on everything, even in aviation. That's America's #1 advantage is aviation, and they are catching up. We have advantages in a very narrow technologies. Specifically, like we have the commercial aviation advantage, right? Building a large jumbo jet, wide body jumbo jet. We have an advantage in that. We have an advantage in some of our stealth technology. However, our technology, as far as reducing radar cross section, I think our stealth is better than theirs. However, our stealth is incredibly difficult to use at a high, like it degrades quickly, requires a lot of maintenance. And as you're seeing in Iran, we lack the amount of capacity to actually keep stealth aircraft in the air, which is why there's so many F-15s flying and getting shot down. Is because we don't have enough stealth aircraft. We're not capable of keeping the operational tempo up with only stealth, even against just Iran. So that's a narrow area. But the Chinese are catching up. They have their 6th generation fighters that they are developing right now. And their strategy is incredibly successful. Their strategy of how to use fighters was tested in the Indian versus Pakistani conflict, which is basically you will use the fighter jets as missile boats, torpedo boats of the air, and then they will launch their air-to-air missiles beyond their radar range, and it'll be guided in by super high powerful radars from AWACS. So they'll have cooperative missiles where I'll shoot a missile, but I'm connected to you via a data link, and the missile will transfer its control over to the AWACS, and the AWACS will guide it from way beyond visual range, like 60 miles away, 100 miles away, 100 kilometers away. And they will guide the missile in, and the targeted plane won't even know they're being fucking targeted. That's exactly what happened to the Indians. And they were shot down in Western fighters. And if you know anything about air-to-air technology, this is a really important point. The Chinese air-to-air missiles, their newest missile is superior to ours. I think it's the PL-15, or is it, no, is it the PL-21? Yes, the PL-21. Over 300 kilometers and powered by a ramjet engine. We don't have anything like this. We have nothing like this. The PL-17 or the PL-20 is a missile claimed to have a range of more than 400 kilometers and intended to target high-value airborne assets such as tankers and early warning and control AWACS aircraft. This shit puts America to shame. We can't handle this shit. We have nothing like this. The 174B gunslinger. Oh no. Oh no. 240 oh no. No, what do we like, we're trying to develop this shit, but they're ahead of us because the AMRAAM is too short of a range, 90 kilometers. So they are in like they're at a severe disadvantage in air-to-air combat. So they get shot well before we shoot. And this is what people don't understand. Here's the PL-15, which is like the current one, and has a range of 300 kilometers. So the Chinese shoot first, which means what? It means the Americans have to go, either they have to afterburner straight in, meaning they're getting shot all the way, or they have to notch and try to evade, which means that they are losing the energy fight. The fucking like, we're so cooked, it's not even funny. Even in the thing we think we're so superior on. And again, if you're not a fucking military nerd, it's not that important. The important point is, if we actually tried to fight China, we would get absolutely fucking smoked.
The concept of, we played earlier the Thucydides trap comments from Xi, where he's warning about the potential of war between a preeminent power and a rising power, and the way that creates tensions and can lead to an inevitability of war if it's not handled properly. I mean, just think about how that would go for us. Given their manufacturing prowess, given the fact that in our war of 40 days against the middling power at best, that we're already running low on various stockpiles and can't help out our allies and are leaving them high and dry, and our bases are obliterated and our soldiers are having to flee, etc. I mean, how do you think this would go? It's preposterous to think about, and that the Chinese know that. We know it. That's why for Taiwan, I mean, the Chinese, they don't really have to do anything, because the reality of the global power balance has become so manifestly clear. And Iran has been obviously a really central part of that.
Weren't the missiles used in Pakistan for mitigating conflict guided by AWACS and not even the onboard radar of the Pakistan? Yeah, okay, so basically what happened is the Pakistanis used their Chinese fighter, and they launched Chinese air-to-air missiles, right? And that had a technology where it could data connect to the AWACS, which is like a giant radar plane, right? And that radar plane guided in the missiles until they were able to target like at a terminal when they're about to like finally hit their targets to the terminal phase. So they shot the missiles not using their own plane's radar, but actually using the radar of the AWACS, which they had a data link to, which is like the next development of air-to-air engagement technology, which, I mean, I don't even think the US can do that. I think we're trying to develop it, but the Chinese demonstrated it in combat. I think we can, or we're like trying. Is AWACS like a better beeswax or something? No, it just means it means like airborne warning and aircraft control system or something like that. We're having to train all the Euroids on how to do that kind of systems integration now because we have it. Yeah, the Europeans got fucking smoked. They got fucking smoked. It was all sorts of European fighters. I think Eurofighters got shot down. Like, it was a disaster for the Indians because they relied on European and American technology, and the Pakistanis used Chinese technology, and they smoked their ass. Rafale. Yeah, I think it was Rafale. You're right. It was the Rafale.
Let me go ahead and put up on the screen the second element here, which we mentioned before. And I think the Americans will see this as significant. You've got this agreement on opposing Hormuz toll. But as we discussed before, the rest of the language, very ambiguous. Okay, we oppose a militarized strait. Okay, well, who's the military? You know, that means they oppose our military being in the strait as well. And I'm sure they do, right? It's very important. China is a trading nation, very important that they're able to trade freely around the world. That's significant for their export economy, no doubt about it. So you have that, and otherwise you had very little public discussion on Iran. And if Trump thinks that China is going to come in and bail him out because they're in such dire straits over the war, I think he's an absolute fool. And the very fact that he has to go to China to try to bail us out is humiliating to begin with. So it's quite an astonishing circumstance that we find ourselves in here. When we talked to Colonel Wilkerson earlier in the week, Emily and I did that interview. He said he was like, I'm 50-50 on whether Trump even goes because of the weakness of the position going in. Now, Trump, being megalomaniac, obviously thought he could get in the room and sweet talk and get some kind of a deal, and he'll certainly be able to spin some sort of a victory narrative out of here, right? Oh, we got this deal, and he'll just make shit shit up too. He's not afraid to do that. But I think that's an indication of how much our position was damaged by recent moves by Trump. This meeting had to be pushed off already. That it would even be a possibility of, I don't know if we should even go forward with this thing.
Yeah, it's not. It's really not good. And I also think what's fascinating about all of this is what you can see with the arms sales, the movement, the way that they're even talking around Iran. Like they mention the militarization of the Strait. They say they oppose the toll. Do they really? I mean, it's one of those where they may say it in principle, but in the status quo, would they do anything?
Well, it's like, we're not charging a toll. We're charging a safety surcharge.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Exactly. I've at least seen them and their public statements. They talk around in circles, which is why you have to parse what they say very, very carefully.
All diplomatic languages. Like
Absolutely.
That, yeah.
And one of the things that I think you really do highlight in what's happening over there also, and this is, look, you have to contrast our internal systems. Like the internal system of China is one of near total power consolidation with Xi Jinping. Now, often that can go very awry. He changed not the Constitution, whatever it is, to be able to remain president for life.
It's so funny because people are like, first of all, he didn't change it to be president for life. They just lifted term limits. They still have to do the re-election process. That process still exists. He didn't make I am now president for life rule. That's not true. They lifted term limits. They'd like to do these little shortcuts, which end up being dishonest.
He's recently gone after the equivalent of the Secretary of Defense, who I think he was just condemned to death.
For corruption, taking bribes. In America, the Secretary of Defense takes bribes, and we're like, good job, buddy. Enjoy the yacht. Oh no, we spent $1 trillion on the F-35 and it can't fly. Oh no, how did that happen? Oh, anyway. Oh, all the Secretary of Defenses then become the CEO of Northrop Grumman. Oh my God, I can't believe it. What happened? They're corrupt. Oh, they keep getting these contracts even though they can't deliver on time. Whoa.
Internal repression within.
Your death penalty take is a little crazy. Oh, you mean that you think that we should kill more corrupt people than I think? I tend to think that the death penalty is bad as a general social punishment for crime. But I do think if somebody commits social murders or abuses their power and it's proved beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Then either turn them down or you up, but the audio is really unbalanced. Yeah, see, I asked chatters earlier and they said it wasn't.
The CCP, I'm not even talking about.
How about now?
For the Chinese people has gone up immensely under his reign. You would think.
Is this better? Am I the same volume?
Often that makes somebody weaker. Right now, it seems as if he's pulling things off. Remember, we're looking at things from afar.
What about now? It sounds the same. It's fine. Because I changed shit, motherfucker. Because I changed shit. Sometimes the audio perverts are right. Okay, I'm going to say something to you, chat. Sometimes the audio perverts are right. Okay? There's a range of where things start to get bad enough that the audio perverts are actually positive for the stream. Now, when it gets to be like very small little shit, then they're annoying as fuck, right? But when it's like one thing is much louder than the other, I want people to tell me, hey, that's what's happening. There's something going on with my mixer and my microphone. I've had them for 7 years and I've used them daily. And, let's just say things go bad over time, right? Like eventually these things are going to go out. They're going to go bad, right? Because they're not exactly like I got a fucking Go XLR mixer. It's not exactly the most robust thing. The company folded, like it is what it is. The gas station I bought gas from yesterday is $4.26 a gallon here in Denver. Oh, it's because the war is going really badly. I think the Iranians, did they like sink a ship yesterday or something? Yeah, see, there it is. There it is. Oil's back up. Time for another rumor that we're about to have a peace treaty. Oh, there it is. Trump-Xi meeting could produce something substantial. It's over $12 in Norway. Yeah, because you're paying taxes, which is awesome. All right. I wish we had to pay a lot of taxes on our gas and it was used for high quality public transit. I wish people were incentivized to use EVs and plug-in hybrids. I wish people were like nudged away from using oil, because if Norway never had, if Norway lost access to oil, your lives would fucking not change that much because your system is 100% renewable. And like 90% of new cars are electric vehicles. It would be annoying, but you guys wouldn't fucking fall apart like we would. Bro, why are you using gas cars in Norway? I mean, I don't think anybody does. I think the Norwegians, no one really does. Unless they like paying taxes for fun. Inflation rate projected to hit 6% in the second quarter. The housing market's about to crash, dude. The housing market's gonna crash. Everybody who has an ARM is going to be fucked. An ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. High inflation is beneficial for the wealthy. It's beneficial for those of us who had debt, like me. La 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 la. Yay! Debt! My debt is being devalued. Yay! But there's also another problem, which is like wages don't necessarily go up. So your wages are also going down. Oh. Damn, it seems like the poor get fucked both ways. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's not good. Going up 12 basis points in one day? Oh my Lord, that's not good. Have you guys all become bond understanders? In bonds chat, the green arrow is bad. The green arrow is bad. So if you want to know like what your mortgage rates are, what your, what the rates for a mortgage are, the credit card interest rates, your student loan interest rates, it's all based off of the 10-year. So what banks do is they go, okay, what is the prime rate? And then they add some percentage points to it. And that's how they do their, that's about the job of a banker in a nutshell. What's the interest rate? Okay, add 3%. Okay, I'm done. And then they do that. My money goes for paying for my kids to couch surf so they don't have to sleep in my car with me. That definitely seems like a bad situation, DJ. Are you on your Section 8 waiting list? You should definitely get on if you have kids, especially. You should definitely get on the Section 8 housing list, and don't be shy about being annoying. A lot of those lists are not open. They are for people with kids, but I mean, they are getting cut under Trump. So again, maybe it's way worse now. I haven't looked into it in a year or two. So the 30-year is at a 15-year high. Interest rates haven't been this high since March of 2007. Al-Qaeda, the U.S. eased the Middle East shock and kept prices from spiking even higher. Yeah, the Chinese did do that.
Oil prices jumping after President Trump says China agreed to buy U.S. crude, but Beijing has not confirmed the purchases. CNBC's reached out to Chinese authorities for comment, but has not received a response. Brian Sullivan joins us now from a man might have some answers, Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Joe and Andrew, good morning. That's right. We are with Secretary Chris Wright, as you said, the U.S. Energy Secretary. We are here at Golden Pass, which is ExxonMobil and Qatar Energy's massive new LNG facility in Port Arthur, Texas. Really a first look. I think we are the first media that has been invited in this brand new facility. The first cargo of LNG just left a couple of weeks ago. And I guess we have to thank you because you got us in the door. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you very much.
Oh, thrilled to be here. These are the kind of energy facilities that are fantastic for America and that power the world.
A couple thousand employees here building out all the trains, the export quantities, not what they are going to be, but they will be soon. I want to ask you, Joe just had some headlines here before we came out of the commercial break, which is basically that China may have agreed to buy U.S. oil. What can you tell us about the China meetings and China's energy purchases from the United States?
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, we were the largest importer of oil and natural gas in the world, and today China is the largest importer of oil and natural gas in the world. So there's a natural energy trade there. We've sold them, ethane for petrochemicals and oil on and off through.
The idea, like, by the way, just so you know, this is bad for you because if China is buying more oil and gas, that means what? That means they're bidding against you, the consumer. You don't own fucking ExxonMobil. So what this is saying is more of America's oil and gas, which we don't own. So this is what happens, chat. In America, we have privatized oil and gas companies. So what that means is they drill oil out of our natural parks and wildlife refuges. I can't say words. They drill them out. The oil goes onto a pipeline. That pipeline goes down to Texas, the Gulf Coast. They put it on ships and they send it abroad. Where does America benefit? Nowhere. The only people that benefit are the owners of the oil companies who are making profit. Well, many of them aren't even American. So America has basically been turned into a pseudo, we're being hyper exploited. That's incredible. And so the Chinese, they get to buy that oil on the open market, but they also get the benefit of not having oil wells in their country, right? They don't have all the pollution and the groundwater contamination and the spills and like they don't have the ecological devastation and reduction of their country's wealth. They just get to buy it delivered right to their shores. Congratulations. That's what Donald Trump is celebrating. The fact that there's more competition for American consumers for American oil. Now, a lot of countries that produce oil don't do that. In fact, almost every country that produces oil heavily subsidizes oil use for their domestic population. I think in Saudi Arabia, they charge like 25 cents a fucking gallon of gas, right? Like Iran, they do the same. In fact, it's so subsidized in places like Iran. One of the things that people do is they'll take oil or diesel from their local gas stations and then smuggle it. People will take it from their local gas stations and smuggle it abroad because, you know, they can arbitrage the difference between their subsidized price and the foreign price. The only state that gets dividends from their oil is Alaska. And they get every citizen of Alaska gets thousands of dollars every year as a check. And they don't even own it. They just get dividend. They just get paid. It's kind of hilarious that he keeps saying us when no one is benefiting us. And worse, the fossil fuel companies don't pay taxes, so we don't even get that out of them. Yeah, it's actually insane. The Alaska Permanent Fund is a constitutionally established permanent fund and sovereign wealth fund managed by the state-owned corporation Alaska Permanent Fund Corporation. It was established in Alaska in 1976 by Article 9, Section 15 of the Alaska State Constitution under Governor Jay Hammond and Attorney General Avram Gross. From 1976 until April 1980, the Department of Revenue Treasury managed the state's permanent fund assets until in 1980, the Alaska State Legislature created the APFC. As of 2019, the fund was worth $64 billion and had been funded by oil and mining revenues. It was paid out an average of approximately $1,600 annually per resident, adjusted to 2019 dollars. What is it at now? Oh, damn, it went up to $3,200 last year. It was $3,613 in 2022. God damn. Wouldn't that be nice? Americans' views of China have grown somewhat more positive. I mean, by the way, the idea of like, oh, I have an unfavorable opinion of China equals we should fight a war with China doesn't follow logically. Also, I want this to bend up. China was popular like 15 years ago. We'll make it, it's growing in popularity like a rocket. Go and look at social media. If you go and look at social media, the only people that are trashing China now are literal hogs. China is like winning massive soft power, both here and abroad. So I would bet that this back from March, I bet you China's approval has jumped even more since March. And you can see it's being led by Democratic leaners. And by the way, even Republicans like China more. Only 14% of Democrats say that China is an enemy, which is the more important thing. You can have criticisms of China. You can be suspicious of China, but that's different than thinking they're our enemy. Partner, competitor, enemy. Only 17% of U.S. adults have confidence Xi Jinping to do the right thing regarding world affairs. I would love to talk to Americans about Xi Jinping. I would love to hear the average American's ideas about Xi Jinping. I'd love to hear their incredibly intelligent, thoughtful, and well-informed opinion on Xi Jinping.
The years, and I suspect we'll see a growth in their oil imports from the United States.
So you think, you said suspect, but you think they will be a larger buyer? We know they're a huge buyer of U.S. LNG, or at least Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan are. China as well. You think they'll be a bigger buyer of U.S. crude oil?
I do think they will. There's huge interest in Asian buyers for more oil out of Alaska as well. You know, now our oil goes out of the Gulf of Mexico. We'll see more of that going over to China. But in the not too distant future, we're going to see more oil coming out of Alaska that's going to supply our neighbors and friends in Asia as well.
You know, speaking of oil, there's been, I don't want to say confusion about oil. It's the wrong term. But when you look at some of the inventory data, when you look at Hormuz, when you look at all the flows of oil, a lot of really smart people have said we're going to be at 150, 175, $200 a barrel for oil. We're higher than we were. We're at 100 and change for oil. Do you know why oil prices have not moved even higher than they are? Can you help shed some light on the state of the oil market right now?
Yeah, I think a good chunk of that is President Trump's energy dominance agenda. The world knows he's all in growing supply. The United States is going to grow our supply of crude oil and refined products. So while we have a temporary interruption, and it's a meaningful interruption, but to end Iran's threat of getting a nuclear weapon, that would be decades of threat to global energy markets, to peace and prosperity in the world. So President Trump's willing to lean in there. Yes, it's disruptive in the short term, but to end their ability to get a nuclear weapon and have the U.S. continue to grow our production and supply, I think people realize this is not a new world. This is a bump on the road, and we'll get through it.
You said short term. Should the world get prepared for maybe a longer supply disruption than some initially suspected? Because give us your view on where we stand in the Strait of Hormuz right now, if you would, Mr. Secretary. And also, what are your estimations about how long things might take to return to normal? And I hate that term, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, a lot of that's up to Iran. One way or the other, we will see an end to the Iranian nuclear program, and we will see free flow of traffic through the Straits of Hormuz. That could happen relatively rapidly with an agreement with Iran. Every nation in the world is standing against what Iran is doing, including China, who's a major buyer of Iranian oil and other oil from the Arabian Gulf.
Do you think they'll swap that out for U.S. oil? It's kind of what I asked you at the top of the interview.
Yeah, certainly in the short run, they're going to do that. They'll continue to buy, and I think, growing amounts of U.S. oil. But ultimately, the world needs to get the Persian Gulf open. Iran's attempt to hold the whole world hostage. People know it's temporary. We sent 3 United States Navy destroyers through it. We escorted some tankers out. That's not the ideal way to do it, but if forced to do it, that's how we'll do it. I think at the end of the day, you're going to see the Iranian regime under such intense economic pressure and global pressure that they'll back off this nonsense. Right now, they're terrorizing the planet.
The UAE announcing this morning, guys, that they're going to basically double their pipeline capacity around the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE is kind of a peninsula that comes out in this pipeline. They have one that goes across. They want to now build a second one. They just announced that this morning. We've seen Saudi Arabia go full flow to the Red Sea with their port of Yanbu. Do you think that the Strait of Hormuz and the Arabian Gulf are going to become permanently less important? They're still massively important, but less important than they have been?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Iran, this is a card you can play once. You can play once. We'll see more pipeline capacity through Saudi, through UAE. You know, there's an Iraqi pipeline that goes to Ceyhan in Turkey. We could see a pipeline going to Jordan. There'll be other routes for energy to get out of the Persian Gulf. I prefer to call it the Arabian Gulf. Yeah. But yeah, I think we will see a decreasing importance from the Strait of Hormuz, but not a decreasing importance of those nations' energy production and energy supply. Yeah. They're great allies of the United States. They're key energy suppliers to the world. And we need to see prosperity, peace, and economic growth returning to that region.
I mean, it's just like, the thing that's really insane to me about all of this is like, this doesn't ease anything. All this does is raise prices for the U.S. and ensure that China has a ready supply of oil. Now, yes, they have to pay higher prices because all oil has been constrained. But the net effect of this deal is to raise prices for the U.S. economy, driving our inflation higher. I prefer to call it the Arabian Gulf, which is... I think one of the things that's really funny about the American fascism is they're like trying to rename shit. And it's very funny. I'm sure this is fine. Inflation rate projected to hit 6% in the second quarter. I should buy more euros. What really no one is talking about is the global food fertilizer crisis, including in the U.S. The fertilizer was 70% more expensive. Now with diesel more expensive, food is going to get insane. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. People are in trouble.
I can't ever say anything critical, let alone he
never does.
Right, but that is just a very he treats in that he sounds like he's talking about Vladimir Putin, and I think the you didn't have to pin the tail on the donkey and say the United States is the declining power for it to be very clear that in the optics and dynamics and on any metric that Trump understands, let alone the rest of the world, which of those two countries is the declining country, and Xi Jinping didn't need to say it directly. It's pretty clear to everyone where they stand in terms of relative power and trajectory.
Working class Americans would agree with that.
Just why speak that way to an authoritarian leader who has like the greatest firewall in the world in terms of stopping the free flow of information, who's jailed Jimmy Lai, the publisher, pro-democracy advocate from Hong Kong. Yes, and Donald Trump has no problem belittling political rivals in the U.S. and being incredibly mean to other people. And I just looking back, Trump made his bed here.
Yeah.
There were 3 key mistakes he made. First was this trade war with China, the one he started out with all the tariffs. He lost that trade war, and that China came back at him. This was before the last meeting in Seoul. That did not work. He was going to, bring the Chinese to their knees. It didn't work. The second thing was I think the obsession with first Canada as the 51st state, but then Greenland. And he destroyed essentially the relationship with Europe and NATO. That was a major mistake. And then the last one, obviously, is this war with Iran. So it's 3 geostrategic mistakes, in my view, and I talked to experts about it, that led him to come into this summit in a very weak position. And we saw that.
The first and the last point that you made, leading to massive economic struggle. Sam Stein here at home with rising gas prices, rising prices at the grocery store, rising prices for health. I mean, all around Americans, many would argue, are suffering at the rising costs around them and trying to stay afloat.
Look, I'm going to zag ever so slightly here. Like, I think there's some virtue and value to trying to make sure that relations with China are non-combative and productive in some respects. And if Trump can get a reduction in tariffs, if he can get more Chinese purchases of American farm equipment and our beef, for instance, that's great for the country. It's good. But, it will take time. That's the zag. Now, what I will say is, and we're going back to these true social posts because that's really all we have to work off of at this point, is it's remarkable how little actual prep it appears went into all this. Usually during these things, and David and Jonathan can attest to this, they go into these summits with deliverables already baked in. And they'll have, copious amount of paperwork to hand out. They'll have briefings to give to reporters. And they'll have things to tout and crow about after the fact. And when Trump appeared on Fox News last night to talk about this, it was all in the abstract. Very little about what we were talking about with China with respect to
China's prosperous nation is improving the lives of their citizens, but they're authoritarian because they're doing it Asian style. What's funny is, like, I've heard it described that Japan and especially South Korea and Singapore, they developed with a policy that could be best described as socialism without socialists. Meaning that South Korea and Singapore developed policies that were traditionally associated with the left, but did so with geopolitically aligned with the U.S. And that's how they got rich. State enterprise, protectionism, land reform, stuff like that. But they just did socialism without the socialists, as far as the economic developmental socialism. They literally did 5-year plans, exactly. And in Singapore, they have government ownership of land. Most people live in social housing. But people don't really spend a lot of time going, oh my God, how authoritarian South Korea is. Oh my God, I can't believe how authoritarian Singapore is. Because they're capitalists. So the authoritarianism is acceptable.
Iran, for instance. And then if you look at it,
I've heard people say China is the most national socialist country to ever exist. Yeah, those people are called stupid. Those people are stupid. China pretty much doesn't have any of the attributes of fascism. Literally not one. That's what's very funny about that argument. It's because they're a socialist country, but they're a country. Therefore, they're national socialist. I'm very smart. That's pretty much the argument.
True Social feed this morning. It's ridiculous. The two main posts are him glowing at the fact that they made that 30-foot tall gold statue of him at Trump Doral, and the other one that Jonathan Lemire talked about, which is how China has a ballroom and how great the ballroom is. A functioning, operational White House would have more to crow about, would have baked in the accomplishments in advance. Would be coming back from China with the deliverables already there. But that's not this White House.
And again, the one deal that was announced by President Trump in an interview with Sean Hannity when he said Boeing's buying 200 jets. Chinese officials asked about that, did not confirm that even had happened, and it's even lower than was expected, as John pointed out. One other question for you before we go to break here, David, is the CIA director's visit to Cuba yesterday. John Ratcliffe went to Cuba. Talking to people there, saying effectively, we want to come in here, we want to help you, we want to bring capital, we want to bring all those things, but you must change your regime if you're going to get our help. Is Cuba sort of next on the list for this administration after Venezuela and Iran?
I think they are, because it's a lot easier to pick on a small island that's 90 miles from the United States than it is to deal with a power the size of China. So it's an intimidation effort. It's, Ratcliffe has risen a lot inside the administration. He spends most of his time at the White House, I'm told. That's also about FaceTime with the boss. So it's important, and that's also a Marco Rubio effort. And he generally has handled things well. There were talks about a peace deal in Lebanon run by Rubio's team, and the people involved have told Julia Jester, our colleague, that those are going well. They're just well organized, which can't be said about the rest of the administration. And just the last thought on China, I don't know if this is a strategy, but it almost seems like the Chinese aren't announcing any deals or confirming anything as a way to just, again, make Trump look weak.
Totally agree.
No NVIDIA, no jets,
Yeah.
The Chinese wanted the non-deliverable summit here.
I mean, Sam points out the goals of maybe potentially reduction in tariffs or help on Iran. I mean, these are two products of this administration's creation. So they need help on their own problems, and here are the headlines. I mean, it all is about sort of Trump going to him. Trump butters up Xi, who stands his ground. Xi gives Trump warning on Taiwan. Trump might
Oh my God, the mogging, dude. The mogging. I mean, Xi just understands how to mog. Like, he's standing and he has Trump come to him. He's a mog maxer. He's a mog maxer. Effortlessly.
Chinese investment. America might not.
She looks strong.
It's a wash. It's a failure or a
Oh,
wash.
there's an ancient tradition called the kowtow. So China, for most of human history, while we've had a civilization, China was oftentimes the most developed and the richest civilization on the planet, right? And so countries that were on the borders of China or allied with China, they would do this ceremony called the kowtow, where they would travel to China and they would bow before the emperor. You ever heard me say kowtow? And so basically, you would go to the emperor and you would bow down low, really low, down to the ground. So this is what Donald Trump is doing. This is what Donald Trump is doing to Xi. Please, Xi, help us. Help us, Xi. In imperial Chinese protocol, the kowtow was before the emperor of China. Depending on the situation's solemnity, different kowtow grades would be used. In the most solemn of ceremonies, for example, at the coronation of a new emperor, the emperor's subject would undertake the ceremony of the 3 kneelings and 9 kowtows, the so-called grand kowtow, which involves kneeling from a standing position 3 times, and each time performing the kowtow 3 times while kneeling. Emmanuel Su describes the full kowtow as 3 kneelings and 9 knockings of the head on the ground. As government officials represented the majesty of the emperor while carrying out their duties, commoners were required to kowtow to them in formal situations. For example, a commoner brought before a local magistrate must kneel and kowtow. A commoner was required to remain kneeling, whereas a person who had earned a degree in the imperial examinations was permitted a seat. So there you go. Someone should put in the diplomacy section Donald Trump to Xi Jinping in 2026. And oh my Lord in heaven.
CNN Business senior reporter David Goldman to make it make sense. He is tracking the 5 key numbers steering this summit. So David, help us break through the noise. What do we need to know?
Yeah, Kristen talked about
Spanberger will veto collective bargaining bill. To veto a bill that would allow state and local employees to collectively bargain.
Sticky issues, they are sticky
Standard
indeed.
Democrat.
Because the first
Don't even get me started. We're going to talk about Jared Gold later.
Million. That's the number of Chinese AI users, according to China. That is why President Trump brought with him Elon Musk and Jensen Huang and Tim Cook. There's a massive market to be tapped in China with the key technology for U.S. national security, and that is AI. The second number you need to understand is 93%. That is the control of the rare earth market that China has. We know that the United States needs to restock its weapons after the Iran war. What makes those weapons work? Rare earth minerals. China has control over that. That will be a big sticking point. 80% is the next number you need to know. That is the percentage of Iranian oil that China buys. It's probably even more than that. That was before the war. China needs the Strait of Hormuz to be reopened because it relies so heavily on Iranian oil. President Trump knows that. That will be a big point of leverage as well. $25 billion is a big number. That's the amount that Taiwan just approved to buy U.S. military equipment. You just heard Kristen talking about how serious she is about this issue. That will be a topic of consideration as well. And then 10% is the last number you need to know. 10% is the tariff that the United States has put on Chinese goods. Now, remember, a year ago it was 145%. It's come down a lot because the Supreme Court says Trump doesn't have the ability to put any tariff he wants. He's lost a little leverage there, Pam.
David Goldman, thank you for helping us better understand everything.
We have the worst. We have a government that's literally designed to be ungovernable. Conservatives have basically tried to create a situation where we're not allowed, like our elected officials cannot govern. I mean, it's funny because Donald Trump is getting owned, but at the same time, the Supreme Court is like, yeah, we can't pass any laws figuring out what gerrymandering is. Oh, actually, gerrymandering is good. The Congress is not allowed to pass a law saying, hey, there's historical racial discrimination. We're going to make sure that these communities get representation. No, that's racism, according to the Supreme Court. Making up for past racism is racism, according to the Supreme Court. That's not allowed by the Constitution. But the president of the United States cannot legislate, cannot issue tariffs. Amazing.
That's going on as always.
CNN's Fareed Zakaria is also here, the host of course, Fareed Zakaria GPS. Fareed, what are you going to be watching for in this meeting in terms of, are we going to see Xi Jinping say something directly to the president about Iran? What are you expecting?
I suspect the Chinese are very formal. They very rarely will reveal publicly what they are really talking about privately. I don't know if you remember, there was a time when Justin Trudeau let slip what he and Xi Jinping had been talking about, and she was visibly upset about it and told him that's not how this is supposed to work. So I suspect what we will see will be all formalities and that kind of thing. Tough for President Trump because he likes to actually just tell you what's going on. I suspect the issue that Trump will want to come away from is some kind of economic deal where there's a talk about the Chinese.
Mike, tariffs threaten capital. The president might be able to tax corpos directly. No, of course. We live in a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. But here's the thing. It's a dumb dictatorship. It's a stupid dictatorship. It's not even the American bourgeoisie. It's like the international financial capital. And it's not even American capital at this point. Our country is in deep trouble, and I don't know if it can be fixed. Like, I am a bloomer, but I don't know that it can be fixed because the Democratic Party is so thoroughly corrupted. I don't think it's going to help us do the reforms we need. Like Cory Booker, do you think he would vote for like expanding the Supreme Court to make it more left wing? And there is really no movement on the left for a new constitution. Like, I think our country is actually kind of cooked. It's kind of cooked. Unless there's some sort of like dramatic change.
Buying goods, investing in
America.
The Chinese will want some lowering of tariffs. The hot button, of course, is Taiwan. The Chinese have indicated that they would like to see some shift in America's position on Taiwan. I doubt that they're going to get something on it. So my guess is that this is going to be a little bit more practical and nitty-gritty and not a transformative set of meetings. But, you know, I suspect that there will be progress on most of the big economic issues that both sides want.
Well, when you were in China last month talking to officials ahead of this meeting, what did they tell you about what to expect?
What they were hoping for was some movement on Taiwan. What they were hoping for was some movement on tariffs. They believe that China unjustly has, you know, these very high tariffs against it. It's a little complicated now because so many of Trump's tariffs have been rolled back by the courts that it's not exactly clear what the tariffs on China are, but they are higher than other countries. And he certainly has the ways he can get them higher. But for them, the main issues were Taiwan, tariffs, and to a certain extent, a sense from the United States that there was a workable relationship going forward, not a kind of race to demonize China, decouple, etc. For Trump, I think it's, somebody said, well, what was it? The three Bs, beans, there are three sets of goods that beans, Boeing, and something else. He's trying to get the Chinese to buy American stuff. Agriculture is a big part of it. Aircraft is a big part of it. And if he can get them to announce some big purchases, that's what he's going to be looking for.
Well, I mean, he also wants them to open up the Chinese economy to these American CEOs and a lot of the CEOs that are traveling with him. I mean, you just heard Kristen listing them out. Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Jensen Huang, from X, Apple, and NVIDIA. Also, we've got reps from Meta, Boeing, those other major companies. What does that look like when they're all gathered there, when they are eventually, all in front of Xi Jinping together?
Well, a lot of those companies have businesses in China. I mean, Tesla sells lots of cars in China, and it's facing stiff competition.
Let's just say the capitalists are not loyal to the United States of America, and they will immediately take as much money as they can and move to China on the drop of a hat if that's what it would take for their class to survive. Again, which is hilarious because they're literally taking themselves into the clutches of the Communist Party of China. Truly amazing. But as we've always said, capitalists will sell you the rope to hang them with. Metaphorically, of course. Metaphorically. Not literally. Metaphorically. We're not literally going to hang Elon Musk. That would be condemnable.
Tesla's market share is declining not because the Chinese government is stopping them, but because the Chinese have a ferociously competitive EV market at home. Most of the ones you mentioned, I think other than Meta, actually do operate there. But you're right, Trump is looking for more market access to China. My sense, Caitlin, is if it's about this kind of stuff, the Chinese are happy to deal. They're happy to be transactional. They're happy to say, in return for you lowering tariffs this much, we'll allow the American banks to own 10% more of their joint ventures in China. The issue that they find with Trump is he's very unpredictable, he's very disruptive, and he does things like the Iran war, which completely disrupt and upend their planning. I mean, the Chinese get a lot of imported energy out of the Persian Gulf, and I think they find that it's the wild card of Trump that they find harder to understand and deal with. Trump, as a transactional businessman, they're happy to cut a deal.
We're learning more about the first day of talks between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The two men toasting each other today at a state banquet in Beijing and praising the long, sometimes strained relationship between the two countries. Xi and Trump both emphasizing the value of cooperation between the world's two economic superpowers. And Xi even seemingly reaching out to the president's base in these comments through a translator. Listen to this.
Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
2.5 centuries later, that first connection has grown into one of the most consequential relationships in world history.
Also new today, a red line over Taiwan. China's state media was reporting that Xi warned President Trump that Taiwan is the most important issue between the two countries. And Xi says if mishandled, could create, quote, a very dangerous situation, end quote. The Chinese Communist Party has long vowed to unify the island with the mainland, even if it requires military force. CNN's Kristen Holmes has more from Beijing.
This is an incredibly consequential meeting, particularly when you get to the top two topics, which are Taiwan and Iran. We heard a readout from state media saying that President Xi has issued somewhat of a veiled threat to the United States over Taiwan, saying it was the single most important issue when it comes to U.S.-China relations. And on top of that,
look at this table, bro. I want a centerpiece like this. I want a centerpiece like this at my table. I want a Swan Lake with a pagoda. Come on.
Handled poorly, it would create instability and be dangerous. We also know President Trump was expected to push President Xi to help with Iran, to pressure Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, Iran and China have a close relationship, and to potentially pressure them even into signing a peace deal. Now, what we heard from the White House, from a White House official, saying essentially that President Xi agreed with President Trump that the Strait of Hormuz should be opened and that Iran shouldn't have any nuclear capability, that's not new. We've already heard President Xi himself say that the Strait of Hormuz should be open. He's losing a lot of money. That's where he gets a significant amount of his oil and gas. But in addition to that, he's also said that he is happy that Iran has agreed to have a commitment not to have any kind of nuclear capabilities. So that part wasn't new. So really what we're looking for now is the nitty-gritty and sticky details of what that conversation looks like, and if they've even had it yet, because they still have tomorrow another bilateral meeting, and this one is expected, I'm told, to be much smaller, and they are going to be hammering out some of the details. And one of the things to keep in mind is President Trump feels most powerful when he's in this kind of small setting, looking straight into the eyes of a leader, feels like he has his negotiation.
Is it not strange that the media keeps egging out a war that will definitely lose to China? It's not. I'm not necessarily understanding the point, because it is the blob's desire to defeat China, right? And so basically China is growing at an exponential rate in every way that you can measure a country's power. China is growing exponentially, generating more electricity, productive capacity, shipbuilding, naval power, air force power, rockets, blah, 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 blah. So every day that we wait, China is more powerful relative to the United States of America, okay? So if we confront and provoke China now, there's an opportunity that we might be able to stop China from successfully reintegrating Taiwan, right? And then why do we want to stop that? Well, it's because of the strategy called the first island chain.
Power. It's not one of these giant
I don't know why everything
tables.
is just fucking breaking, but first island chain. And what that refers to, do you see this line, this red line? This is how you contain China. So if you look at China's coast, China is boxed in. This is the Philippine Sea. This is the South China Sea right here. And so if you look South Korea, Japan, the Japanese archipelago, Taiwan, and then you have the Philippines and Indonesia. Okay? So China is boxed in the ocean by the first island chain. And if you notice, Taiwan is the linchpin of this strategy. Now there's a second island chain as well, but Taiwan is the linchpin of the first island chain strategy. So if Taiwan becomes Chinese, then China has relatively easy open access to the Pacific Ocean. Okay? That's also why we talk about the Strait of Malacca dilemma, the Malacca dilemma. Well, that's right here. So that is these are geographic choke points that contain China. And China relies on a lot of stuff like imported energy from the Middle East, right? So if Taiwan is an American puppet, it can be used to threaten and menace and contain China. So that's why the United States is so interested in provoking China into some sort of war, so that it can close the first island chain, sanction, blockade China, while having the U.S. Navy hanging out into more like at blockade from distance. Now, obviously, South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines would get absolutely pummeled, and Taiwan would be leveled. But ultimately, the United States would be fine and safe. So that's the strategy that we have deployed against China since 1949. So there's really like nothing that you can really say there. It's like now you understand why China is so like up there. They're so, concerned about Taiwan, because if Taiwan becomes Chinese, well, then the pressure of like a war on China becomes so much more remote, and they don't have to worry about their country being blockaded like Iran is being blockaded right now. That makes sense?
Meantime, I want to get over to Eunice Yoon, who may have some news from the Chinese side of all of this. Eunice?
Well, Andrew, the Chinese state media is not reporting President Trump's comments on Air Force One at all. And I think what's interesting about President Trump's comment on board about Taiwan is that it really does explain why, up until this point in the state press, there was no mention of President Trump's comments about Taiwan, which is a signal that the Chinese were not happy with whatever it was that conversation was about Taiwan between President Trump and President Xi. The overarching readout with the Chinese was very glowing about President Trump's praise for President Xi. In that readout, the state media cited President Xi as saying that President Trump wants to make America great again, while President Xi wants Chinese rejuvenation, so putting President Xi on par with President Trump. It also cited President Trump as saying that the two signed deals and resolved issues, and it says that the two discussed hot regional issues. Now, underpinning this newfound friendship between the U.S. and China is what the state media attributed to President Xi, which is a constructive, he says, new U.S.-China strategic stability. But again, as Eamon had mentioned, there was no confirmation of any sort of deals or any formal agreements, not only in the state press, but also the foreign ministry. And also, I think what underscores the fragility of this relationship, yet again, is that we're just getting reports that the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, is going to be visiting with President Xi next Wednesday.
Eunice, are you surprised that President Xi asked President Trump directly about Taiwan and about what he would ultimately do?
Well, based on what we heard yesterday and the fact that President Xi, in the opening visit and kind of like the first moment when he and President Trump are sitting down, that he was stressing.
China is not expansionist. Japan is not part of China. Taiwan is. Yeah. China is not saying like, hey, we need to invade Japan or South Korea or the Philippines. They're saying we want to have the ability to control our immediate. It's like, imagine if China was building a bunch of bases in the Keys, in the Florida Keys, right? Like that, and then putting air bases and military and naval bases in the Yucatan. You know what I mean? Like it tried to draw up a line to box in trade from the Gulf. I think all of us would understand, like, oh, that seems pretty hostile. That seems like, the United States, we would have a pretty legitimate interest in like trying to deter Mexico from accepting Chinese bases in the Yucatan Peninsula, right? Like we would understand, hey, that's kind of bad. But when the United States does it, Americans are just like, huh? What do you mean? What's wrong with that?
The issue that's so important to him, Taiwan, basically saying that if President Trump were to breach that red line when it comes to Taiwan, that the relationship could unfurl and end up in a dangerous scenario. So because his language was so strong yesterday, it's not so surprising that he would carry on today with that same sort of message.
But do you think that he's trying to force the issue? Meaning, I think we're all now trying to understand whether that question and this issue right now, in this moment, given, frankly, we have ammunition issues in terms of what our military is even capable of right now, given everything that's going on elsewhere around the world, and whether we think in any way that President Xi would be trying to take advantage of this moment as it relates to Taiwan.
Well, it could be a scenario where he's probing, because what we have been seeing is that China has become much more confident. A lot of the messaging over the past year is that since President Trump has come in with what the Chinese would describe, the trade wars, the tariffs, that they've been able to survive. They've been able to do well. I think one other thing that is worth thinking about is how it seems as though the Chinese have become much more paranoid about what they're hearing out of William Lai, in the president in Taiwan, that they're feeling much more, because one thing that I would say about China is that the more you see them act confidently, the more it also underscores a certain vulnerability or an anxiety and paranoia that they have. And so because William Lai has been so forceful and talking so much about the potential for Taiwan independence, you're seeing the Chinese feeling that they need to clamp down on that, and also maybe feeling a little bit more emboldened that they might be able to do it, especially if the U.S. is not going to be clamping down and putting pressure on them.
Eunice, what is the date, that the most widely cited date for when she wants to do this is when? There's some things coming up in the future in China where it would make sense that he wanted to get this done? Because it is something he wants to get done. What are those dates? Is it 2027 or later?
Well, right. So that was a date that had been put out by U.S. intelligence officials that it could be 2027. But I mean, people still really don't know, because even though, of course, there's always been a belief that President Xi would want to have what the Chinese describe as a reunification of Taiwan to China, whereas the Taiwanese would say that there is no reunification, but the Chinese would argue that he would want that under his belt. You know, at the same time, the economy here is still quite fragile, you know, despite the fact that we've been seeing all these CEOs coming to town and talking about the potential for the market here. I mean, there's still a lot of fragility, and so because of that, that could be a...
Sorry, chat. I did type on Twitter. Thanks for the descriptions of Kowtow earlier. I learned something new. It's Cow K. It's with a K. K-O-W. I think, like, ultimately the situation that we have with China and Taiwan is, like, Taiwan was a fascist state that we propped up, that started the heroin trade in America, or was like one of the major sources of heroin in the United States. It was a fascist state where Chiang Kai-shek famously said, better to kill 1,000 innocent people than allow one communist to go free. Whose closest ally ideologically was Hitler. And we propped up that up in order to defeat and defame the socialist state, you know? And Taiwan is an artifact of the Cold War. It's an artifact of the United States' interventionism, an attempt to destroy China by any means necessary. I mean, after the United States normalized relations, Taiwan has been, it's really only there as like an oh shit button that we hold over their head. But now that China is very clearly rising to the level of a superpower, and they represent no threat, there's no reasonable way you can look at China and say they are acting in a threatening or a dangerous manner to anyone. The most people have are, my God, there's a private fishing boat that is acting in a way that is like exploitative. That's a fucking company. You want to complain to China about a fishing barge, you know, doing something that is bad for ecology, that's something to bring up with them diplomatically. That's not a fucking military threat. There's fights between Mainers and Canadian lobster fishermen. What, are we about to invade fucking Canada? But Mike, what about the self-determination of the Taiwanese people? I mean, according to them, they don't want independence. They don't want conflict with China, because I think the people of Taiwan understand that allowing themselves to be roped into a war to become, you know, Ukraine for Asia is not going to be good for them.
A reason why President...
Now, the China that we, you know, the Taiwan that we have today, obviously it was democratically reformed in the 90s. The fascist government ended. But you can't do 50 years of exterminationist fascism and then go like, wow, nobody in Taiwan likes China, huh? You know, you shoot people in the head for 50 years if they ever say, hey, we should have peace with China. And then you're like, you know, there's not that many people supporting. And even still, the majority of Taiwanese people do not want independence. Mike, they had an election 5 minutes ago.
He would not want to go ahead with some sort of attack.
Okay. And then, Eunice, one last piece of this. Are you surprised that there were no conversations, at least as President Trump's described this, about tariffs at all, or about these H200 NVIDIA chips? I mean, I think that is surprising. And the other piece was on Iran. The president and President Trump suggested effectively there was a proposal put forward by President Xi that he dismissed outright.
Yeah, well, for the tariffs, I think that it might not have come up because there was an expectation that that since this is the first of 4 meetings, you know, this year, that there was a little bit of time to kind of address the tariff issues as well as rare earths. That the expectation is that the two sides, you know, in kind of the spirit of stability, would want to kind of renew the truce, but that they might still have some time. And then in terms of Iran, I mean, there was, you know, this proposal, but at the same time, a lot of the comments that we heard that President Trump said about President Xi and the Chinese were things that we've heard before. So I think what we were looking for, and a lot of observers were looking for, is whether or not the Chinese would commit to some sort of action, and that's something that we still haven't seen.
Okay,
President Trump
we've
is
got
on
a
his
new
way home
video
from
on
Beijing,
Taiwan. It just
where he
dropped.
met with
I'm
Chinese
excited.
leader Xi Jinping for a second straight day. Today, their one-on-one time
Dave.
included a stroll through the compound of China's Communist Party. But it was aboard
Taiwan
Air Force
independence
One
versus
just a short
unification
time
with the
ago
mainland.
that the president delivered news that's sure to rattle Taiwan.
Maintain status quo, 33.5. Independence as soon as possible, 4%. Unification as soon as possible, 1%. Non-response, 6%. Maintain status quo, decided at a later date, 26.3%. Maintain status quo, move toward independence, 21.9%. So, the independence faction is at best, if at best, 26.3% of Taiwanese people. Independence for Taiwan is an extremely marginalized position. An extremely marginalized position. And as China rises in both economic and geopolitical power, the idea of a gradual unification or a greater association between Taiwan and China is naturally going to happen.
He says he and President Xi discussed a pending multi-billion-dollar U.S. arms deal to the self-governing island, which China claims as its territory. Listen.
We discussed the Taiwan, the whole thing with the arms sales was in great detail, actually. And I'll be making decisions. But I think the last thing we need right now is a war. That's 9,500 miles away. I think that's the last thing we need. We're doing very well.
Would the U.S. defend Taiwan if it came to it?
I don't want to say. I'm not going to say that.
I don't want to say. I'm not going to say. Oh, my God. He's completely cocked. He's 100,000% cocked. My Lord. My Lord. Oh, by the way, we love to see it. We love to see it. This is good. This is good. You know, I'm not trying to have hopium, but here's what I kind of think. I think the future of a unified Africa as a power block, a unified Latin America as a power block, a unified Europe as a power block, China, those could offer a number of powers that are relatively balanced in Middle East as relatively balanced in their economic importance and their diplomatic importance and their population, so that we arrive at a international agreement where international governance becomes possible. I think a unipolar world or even a bipolar world is unstable and dangerous and conflict prone. And when I look at what China is doing and saying, they don't seem to me to be moving in the direction of a power trying to dominate. They look to be a country that is focused on good governance and mutual benefit. And so hopefully, if the United States can be constrained, we can recommit to the idea of international law, international governance, international development, and solving the crises that actually do face our species and our planet, like fucking climate change.
There's only one person that knows that. You know who it is? Me. I'm the only person. That question was asked to me today by President Xi. I said, I don't talk about those.
He asked you today.
He asked you if you would send troops, if you would defend. He asked me if I defend them. I said, I don't talk about that.
All right, let's go live right now to CNN's Julia Benbrook over at the White House. Julia, how significant are the president's comments on Taiwan?
Potentially very significant. President Donald Trump did not go into a lot of detail here, but what he did say, what he didn't say, both lead to a lot of questions. Now, this is following that summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and Trump said that he did not make a commitment either way on Taiwan. When it comes to the arms sales specifically, he said that he will make that determination at some point. Now, this comes after Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in an interview with NBC News following those meetings, said that the United States policy on Taiwan remains, quote, unchanged. And diving a bit deeper into that, the United States acknowledges China's position that Taiwan is a part of China, but has never officially recognized the Communist Party's claim to the self-governing island. And Washington has robust, unofficial business with Taiwan. And so in these questions. There's also been, of course, the United States policy has been intentionally ambiguous when it comes to if it would intervene militarily if China were to attack Taiwan. And Trump was pressed on that specifically. He declined to answer, but he did say that Xi actually asked him about that question as well. He said that he did not answer it there either. Now, overall, this summit seemed to end on a high note for relations between the United States and China. Both of these leaders have been...
Is a new district for the one you hope suggested? No.
Touting that there is a steadier relationship. In Trump's last remarks before he headed home, he praised China. Now, he also said that the two leaders fixed a lot of problems during this summit, but that is where we're lacking a lot of details. What each side got, there are not a lot of concrete specifics to look into at this point. Woof.
Well, the concrete specifics are the United States promised to help China make sure they had a good supply of oil. The concrete specifics are the U.S. promised to help China get oil. Like, that's the concrete specifics that we have.
All right, Julia Benbrook at the White House, thank you very, very much.
Let's get to our chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto, who's been listening in. Jim, who's been to Taiwan and China many, many times. This language on Taiwan from the president, the failure to commit to these arms sales to Taiwan, Jim, is this what China wanted out of this trip?
It's definitely something for China, right? Because the president did not make a commitment to a decision the U.S. had already made, right, to supply these arms. Now, he could change his mind later and decide to send those arms, to move forward on them. But a pause, if we could read it that way, is a win for China. And leading up to this, and we spoke about this prior to the summit, this had been the main concern among U.S. allies in the region, and frankly, many in this country, both Republican and Democrat, that the president would yield ground on Taiwan, whether that be on the arms sales or on language as to how the U.S. describes its relationship to Taiwan. Does it not support independence? Maybe he might move the language to it opposes independence. He didn't say that there. We don't know what he said privately, but that had been the concern going in. So here on Taiwan, from the president's statement, he gave some ground. Again, he could change it tomorrow or next week and say, actually, I'm going ahead with the arms deals, but a pause, time to think about it. He said also in his comments he's going to speak to the person in his administration who handles the Taiwan issue, is an opening for the Chinese leader. I also noted some other language in his comments here, which is him essentially mimicking, parroting China's view of Taiwan. He says, hey, look, we've had it for thousands of years. He's speaking from China's perspective, and then a certain period of time it left. That is China's view, that Taiwan belongs to China, and that this brief period of time, since the 40s, when it became, they can't use the word independent, but when it became separate from China, was the aberration. Right, and it's much like we'll talk about the Ukraine war, right? Mimicking Russia's language about the invasion, whose fault it is, etc. I would say on Taiwan, those two things are movement in the direction of Xi Jinping. He would consider those positives. The other thing I'll say is, going into this, what was the U.S. going to get in return on Iran? Because that was a prime U.S. concern going in, and it doesn't appear, at least it didn't say, that he got any commitment from China to help there, other than to say that they'd like to see the Strait open. And he will say we don't need China, and you've heard that from other U.S. officials. But the fact is, they would certainly like Chinese pressure on Iran to help open up the Strait. So, other than Boeing aircraft sales and soybeans, which, by the way, there's no written commitment, right? And if you go back to the first Trump administration, China promised to buy a whole, loads of soybeans, and they didn't buy all those soybeans. Other than that, it's hard to see what the U.S. walks away from the summit with. It's concrete.
On Iran as well, Jim, I mean, it seemed what the president is saying was discussed and agreed to when it comes to with Xi was largely previously stated positions that China does not want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon, that China would like to see the Strait of Hormuz reopen. I heard the president there say that Iran has told him directly that they do not have the technology to remove the enriched uranium from Iran. Only the United States and China have that technology. So that leaves an open question of, okay, now what?
Yeah, it does. In his comments towards the end there, Trump left open the possibility of going in, right? Is he setting up the possibility of sending U.S. forces in there, which has been an option for some time, and Israelis have considered that as well, but that would be an enormously dangerous operation. Is that a serious proposal from the president there, that he's actually considering that, given all the reporting we have that the president wants to end hostilities? Or is it, braggadocio? Is he saying, "Oh, we can solve this problem. It's not as big a deal as it's been portrayed"? I can't imagine a Chinese-U.S. cooperation, to get it out there in a military operation. But could that be part of a nuclear agreement if the U.S. and Iran were to move forward to serious nuclear negotiations? Possibly. I mean, the other point I'll just make is, the president said that Iran would have used a nuclear weapon by now under the previous nuclear deal. It's not clear. There's no U.S. assessment of that, and it's not clear what he bases that on.
What he's basing that on is making it fucking up. It's called lying. He likes to lie a lot. Everything Donald Trump has tried to do has been an utter catastrophe.
Because Iran had far less enriched uranium under the JCPOA than it has now, with more than 400 kilograms. So it's a comment President Trump has made, a claim he's made repeatedly, but there's no intelligence assessment we're aware of that the U.S. has assessed that Iran would have used a nuclear weapon in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think libs catastrophize too much about Taiwan. It's like the world ends if Taiwan reunifies with China. Like, that's because it's a State Department propaganda argument. No American. Well, I remember when Hong Kong was handed over to China. Do you know how my life changed? Not at all. The same thing would happen if Taiwan adopted the same position to China as Hong Kong has today. Your life would absolutely not change whatsoever. In fact, that would probably significantly increase the odds of world peace and stability. If Taiwan became part of China, like everything was the same, they just adopted the same framework as Hong Kong has, there would be no change in your life whatsoever. None. And I think everybody knows that. So what exactly are we risking nuclear war for? What are we risking nuclear war for? What are we risking World War III for? It doesn't even make sense. There's no compelling American interest that you could say, well, Taiwan produces a lot of semiconductors. Okay, build our own semiconductor factories. Like, what do we... Okay, build our own. Well, Mike, we won't be able to make as much profit. The semiconductor industry will not be able to make as much profit if they make it in Seattle than they do in Taipei. Okay. So you want to risk nuclear hellfire because the semiconductor industry might not make as much profit. I mean, it's nonsensical. All right, chat. I've been trying to watch this fucking episode for like a week now. John Oliver did a thing on the shadow docket. So I wanted to show you that because it's an incredibly important point about how the United States Supreme Court has become nakedly political and no longer interested in even the appearance of being motivated by, legal jurisprudential logic. It is a nakedly partisan political court. Now, I am an advocate for the idea called legal realism, which is the belief that courts are basically, like, judges are basically politicians in robes. One of the key developers of that ideology was former Supreme Court Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. He might know a thing or two about it, So when he says judges are politicians in robes, maybe you should listen. I don't know. Maybe. But it is like one of those, there's a few different ideological pillars of the stream that to understand the world, I highly suggest you become at least familiar with. And legal realism is one of those. And I think that the Roberts Court, ironically, none of whom are legal realists, are acting in the most legal realist way possible. Let's watch the shadow docket with John Oliver. Be right back. Support Israel, that way they make more money. I was gonna say odds that this guy has an anime avatar are nearing 100%. Damn it. Wait. I'm the best at all the games I play. I love people, and I'm hoping that I can get paid to play games instead of having a real job. So you can help me with my dream of being a known gaming champion come true. Please follow me. Okay, so this guy rules, dude. 10 years ago, we got a video, folks. We got a video.
It's amazing. If only Dad could have seen that.
I'm like 20 seconds behind him.
Top clip. I think I almost heard his voice in there somewhere. Awesome. 10 years old. So he's like in his 30s probably, at least. I guess he was watching a movie on the other tab while he was live. Oh, he's got the Asman logs. H3, new video dropped. Aw, no Hasan logs? Denim's logs? Yes! He said it today. Israel's good. I love Israel. Denims, talk about your love for Israel more. Are we allowed to praise Israel and beautiful Jewish people in the chat? I fucking knew it, dude. Ah, fuck. Awesome. All right, let's get back to watching the shadow dockets. By the way, that's a terrible example because the Supreme Court had a decision written by, I think it was either Scalia or Thomas, but they said absolute innocence is not enough or something like that. In a death penalty case, absolute innocence is not enough. Like, you can be executed while being absolutely innocent. It's like absolute innocence. Mere factual innocence. There you go. That's what he was saying. Mere factual innocence. Mere factual incidents is no reason not to carry out a death sentence properly reached. Scalia believed that the Constitution does not forbid executing an innocent person if the trial was procedurally sound, as guilt/innocence is a state issue rather than a federal constitutional question. Again, if you want to understand Republicans, okay? How does that make any sense? All right. Let's say that you want black people killed, and there is a black person that has been found guilty of a crime, but they're innocent. They were found guilty in a racist court by a fully white jury. And evidence emerges that proves beyond any doubt that they're innocent. But you're a dyed-in-the-wool racist who wants to kill any black person you can get away with. What would be the logic that you would need in order to come to that outcome? Now you understand Antonin Scalia. Now you or I are going to react viscerally and emotionally to that idea and say, wow, that's evil. That's wrong. What the fuck are you saying? That can't possibly be a position that is held by the Supreme Court of the United States. There's no way that conservatives believe that. And the answer is they do believe that. Now, what are you going to do about it? And it's a very, we got the Yagopnik raid. How is everybody doing today? May is always, May and the political streaming during May. There's nothing happening except Xi Jinping flexing on Trump. We were talking about hey, Hugo, what's up? We were talking about a very famous case by conservative Justice Antonin Scalia, rest in piss, where he said, mere factual innocence is no reason not to carry out a death sentence properly reached. In other words, it's okay to kill someone who's innocent as long as they went through the right procedures, right? Now, Snopes said, mixture. It's a mixture. Oh yeah, what's the mixture? 9 years after his conviction for shooting and killing 2 police officers, Herrera produced writs stating that he was innocent and that his deceased brother had actually committed the murders. Herrera's last-ditch effort failed, but his case was then used by the Supreme Court in order to decide whether any inmate could use claims of new evidence to argue that their imprisonment violated their constitutional rights. In other words, a claim of innocence based on newly discovered evidence, according to this decision, didn't provide grounds for habeas corpus relief. In other words, if evidence emerges later that proves you're innocent, too late, you're going to be killed. That's what conservatives believe is justice. Now you can listen to that, and I have the same reaction that you do. Hey, Gabor, how's it doing, brother? I have the same reaction that all of you guys do, which is, wow, that's pure evil, and I can't believe anyone would say that. And the answer is, they are evil, and they want to do evil. And to them, anybody who's arrested is a criminal. It doesn't matter if they didn't actually do anything. They were arrested by the police, which means they probably deserve it. So any contortion we need to arrive at in order to exalt the power of the police is what we're going to do. It doesn't matter if you're innocent. In fact, it makes it even more fun. In this instance, what's important is not actually what he said, but what he meant. No, he said exactly what he meant. It's very simple. It doesn't matter if you're innocent. If the procedures are done, you die. That's what he was saying, and he meant it. There's no sugarcoating that. However, Justice Scalia's words regarding that decision are often quoted out of context, leaving readers with the mistaken impression that he believed it was perfectly acceptable for our legal system to execute people whom we knew to be innocent. That's what he was saying. Yes, that's what he was saying. That's exactly what he was saying. That's not out of context. The only context is if you went through all the procedures too late, which is the legal system executing someone who's innocent. You fucking idiot. Jesus. In the fuller context, what he was actually expressing was once a person had been fairly convicted and sentenced in court and they had exhausted all possible avenues of appeal, last-minute claim of innocence was not by itself sufficient grounds for further delaying the carrying out of the sentence. So the reason why I brought this up is because the example they were giving was the shadow docket of like, no, this guy's about to be executed, but he's really innocent. No, that's not the court. That's not a good example, because the decision is you die and they don't care if you're innocent. And also, don't you think a person who was innocent would exercise all their avenues of appeal? They didn't do it. Of course they're going to keep appealing. They didn't do it. And of course they're going to keep looking for more evidence because they didn't do it. That's exactly the situation where you're going to find more evidence of actual innocence, because a person who is actually innocent is going to be constantly trying to prove it because they're in jail facing death. Now, if they're guilty, they might give up, right? But of course you're going to find that. Of course they're going to be the ones that, like, you're much more likely if you're innocent to keep looking for more proof, just logically. And I'm sorry, folks, but like, this is not a joke. Scalia concurred that with the court's 6-3 decision that a claim of innocence should not serve as the sole grounds for habeas corpus relief, stating his written opinion that the sufficient legal relief already existed for people presenting new evidence of innocence, not that factual innocence was irrelevant, and that ruling otherwise would impose an unmanageable burden on lower courts to review newly discovered evidence. Yes, death penalties are fucking bad. We should be very sure someone's guilty before we kill them, you fucking idiot. Jesus Christ. Wait, the court says it's okay to racially profile people on the street, right? It's okay to racially profile people on the street, but it's not okay to make sure that states that have a tradition of racial oppression and a legal regime of racial oppression be forced to draw districts to empower that minority population so that they have proportional power. That's racism. But it's not racism to grab people on the street based on their race. That is the actual position of this. What does appearing to be foreign mean? What's not foreign? What's the not foreign appearance in the United States? Because I have a feeling he doesn't mean indigenous and Americans, right? He doesn't mean like Americans enrolled in a tribe, right? Like he definitely means white. But white people are foreign to these shores. We are the descendants of immigrants. Everybody with white skin is a descendant of an immigrant in North America. Every one of us is foreign to America. You have an accent! Bro, you have an accent! This is also why, and I'm going to stand my ground, standpoint epistemology is stupid. Just because somebody has an identity doesn't mean that their views suddenly become valid because they have the identity, unless they're discussing their experience of being that identity directly, right? That's where it would be relevant. But the standpoint epistemology of the ultra liberal leads to these kind of contradictions. Now, if you're an ultra, you're shocked by this. If you're me, you're not. Because I believe that class consciousness is what actually will motivate us to fight fascism like this. And of course, people need money, and so therefore they take a job in ICE, even though that is oppressing other people like them. Sellouts are as old as the human race. And that's why class solidarity is the key to overturn.
We'd like to know what it is we are following.
Exactly. What you're following is whatever Trump wants. Why are you cheering? Why are you cheering? The Supreme Court has told you it's whatever Trump wants. And there is no stability and there is no predictability. It is what Trump wants and what the Republican Party needs. It's arbitrary. There is no justification. There is no logic. There is no consistency. It is naked power. Get your shit together, you fucking liberals. Why are you smirking? Why are you smiling? I don't understand it, guys. I really don't. Someone help me. Someone fucking help me. Why are they smirking? Why are they cheering?
Seems to be who is president at the time.
You don't say. That's what I've been fucking saying from the beginning. It's nakedly, it is legal realism. They're politicians. They're seizing power. They're supporting the Republicans and hurting the Democrats. It's not complicated, which is why the judiciary should not exist as it does, because there is no elections. There's no way to get rid of these people. Waiting for them to randomly fucking die is not tenable. Majority of the populace doesn't know this, and that's why we're here. These are also the people watching all over. No, I get it, bro. I fucking get it. But this is behind, like, I'm sorry, but the time for the jokey, like, giggling, haha, I caught you being hypocritical shit, that was out of style. That was stale 10 years ago. I don't think we know how to do anything but this. And that's why I'm yelling. It's not because John is wrong. It's not that it's not even that this isn't useful. I think it is useful. The problem is there's no political language that's no one, very few people, maybe like 3 or 4 people running for office right now are talking the way we need them to talk. And I'm sorry, that's legal realism is a doctrine of the left, right? Like it is us explaining materially how courts operate. Right. And of course, the right-wing justices that are acting nakedly political are trying to claim that they're just umpires because that is their ideology. Their ideology is to obscure what they're doing so they don't get contained by democracy. If they claim they're just calling balls and strikes and they're the strikes and they're just doing physics of the law, right? There's no political motivations whatsoever. We're just looking at the natural laws of man and we are going by the words and we are divining the exact, blah, blah, blah. We're doing all these abstract and not apolitical tasks of being a lawyer, right? And our decisions are just balls and strikes. Then you might not attack them politically. But 3 of the people on the Supreme Court worked for George W. Bush's legal team to steal the 2000 election. These are intensely political people. And the fact that they insult your intelligence and they think you're dumb enough to believe that they're not political. I mean, I'm sorry, chat. Like, I wish that I had freedom of speech. There's a couple things. Like, part of me is glad that there are constraints on what I'm allowed to say as a Twitch streamer, because I think it does make me more approachable and it has people listen to my arguments as opposed to if I just stated my conclusions. You know what I mean? Like, if I stated my conclusions, it might alienate more normies, right? So it's almost a good thing that I am forced to constrain my arguments to a certain acceptable bound of belief or opinion. Like, it's probably a good idea. That being said, there are a few times when you can look at the situation and say, these are fascists, these are anti-democratic fascists, and we need radical change. And we need it immediately. I'm sorry, Chad, I'm looking for Kamala Harris. She endorsed studying the Supreme Court again. Did you see Abigail CIA Berger vetoed collective bargaining? Yes, I did. Just after 6 p.m. on the February evening 2016, the Supreme Court issued a cryptic one-paragraph ruling that set both climate policy and the court itself spinning in new directions. By a 5-4 vote along partisan lines, the order halted President Barack Obama's Clean Power Plan. Yeah, basically, they said that it was going to hurt companies economically, so they needed to do a shadow docket. Senate Democrats try to make nice with Fetterman. Wow, I can't believe Chuck Schumer's strategy is to kiss his ass like a pathetic worm. Wow, I can't believe he's surrendering to the right. The iconoclastic Pennsylvania Democrat. What do you mean? There's no way you could call him iconoclastic, Igor. He worships the icons of America. What the fuck are you saying? What? Do people not know what these words mean? It sucks being literate. It absolutely sucks being literate. It absolutely sucks. This guy worships America. He wraps himself in the flag and Zionism. He treats it like a fucking religious idol. What are you saying? He's the opposite. He's the most establishment cucked motherfucker on the planet. Iconoclastic my ass. He is broken with his party over Israel. No, he didn't. He was supporting Joe Biden. What are you saying? This is nonsense. What are you saying? The breaks could have led to speculation that Fetterman could be willing to make a change, either to become the Senate's third independent or even join the GOP caucus. I mean, the correct decision, if you're him, is to become an independent, but convince the Republicans not to primary you, which they won't do. Okay, like that, it's not going to work because the Republicans, they're gonna try to run their like abortion banning psycho, so it's not gonna happen. Please comment on the new Drake album. Are people still listening to Drake? What are you, like a mall manager looking for more elevator music? Like, what are you saying? Oh, this is my comment on Drake. I like
is Drake hip hop?
Drake is pop to me, in the sense like if I was in Target in Houston and I heard a Drake song, it feels like a lot of his music is compatible with shopping.
Commercial music.
Or it's you know,
music,
shopping with an edge in certain instances.
Fair. I like Drake's music, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Of course, I mean, I
it's
get
commercial, entertaining, fun, good,
it's
formulaic music.
It's likable.
Likable music, yeah. Like is
the way he delivers, it's likable. This is one of those situations where it's almost it's more insulting than being insulting. Like, as an artist, what this is like an evisceration of you at such a fundamental level. I don't even really think there's a way, like, I don't think it's possible to like rip someone down harder than that. Drake is the Nickelback of rap. Honestly, no. Because I feel like Nickelback legitimately had a moment. They legitimately had a moment where everybody liked Nickelback. Like, I think Drake was almost always, I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like Drake was always this way. Like, was considered to be like, how do I put this? Like, I'd put him below Nickelback is what I'm saying. Corny. He was always 100% corny. Nickelback had a moment where people were like legitimately headbanging to that shit, which is funny now because we all performatively make fun of it, right? But Nickelback isn't even the worst of that kind of music. Like, there were people that are way cornier than Nickelback. Fuck. Oh, God. There was this one song I heard that was the most proto-incel shit. I wish I could remember. Vio, remember that song we listened to? You remember that song we listened to? That was like Nickelback like. Do you remember what band that was? Yeah. God, you remember what that song was? Fuck. I want to show it to chat because it's so bad. Fuck. Again, Creed is a banger. Creed is like, what do you guys like? Obviously it's cringe as fuck, but like there's a reason why people keep going back to it. Because it fucking melts. It's exactly what it is. It's like the highest form of cringe, but it bangs. It's like the song that we all want to sing at karaoke because it means we don't take ourselves seriously, but you can belt. Like, come on. But my friend, I sacrifice. Okay, I don't want to play more than that because I'll get DMCA'd, but you get my point. Creed is trash. Yes, of course it is. You're not seeing my point. That's just wannabe Pearl Jam. Yes, no, it's Christian Pearl Jam. Exactly. That's what Creed is. It's Christian Pearl Jam. You're hitting it. Leftist streamer have good take at possible difficulty on music. What? This is like just basic history. I'm sorry I'm old enough to remember. I'm sorry you emerged out of a pod 5 years ago and only can look at music from the perspective of now as opposed to in your mind understand how things were approached at the time they were contemporary. I don't think there was ever a time where people were like, Drake, that's the hard stuff. That never happened. Drake was the music of like middle school teenagers. It was like your mom's favorite hip hop. And again, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you get what I mean? It sounded like dog shit in the 90s. Get a grip, Mike. We've got ourselves. I always hated nu metal. You may have hated it, but you were special. I'm talking about the general approach that everybody was having at the time. Okay. It's so funny trying to get 16-year-old chatters to understand Creed, Pearl Jam, nu metal versus grunge versus, which is all that shit. Like, again, I was never even really a fan of most of that stuff. I'm a little bit older than that. But, you know, that being said, who didn't listen to fucking Stained or Three Doors Down or whatever that other shit was? That was like culturally dominant. It was like top of the charts. You know, I was never really a Limp Bizkit thing. That was more my friend like that. My best friend like Limp Bizkit, and I never really vibed with that. I was more like a melodic death metal guy at that time. I wanted the harder shit, which I was weird. Is this the band you were thinking of? I'm talking about the year 2003. So not now, chat. I'm just talking about back then, okay? I'm not talking about now. I can't believe he made this 3 years ago. Limp Biscuit. I can't even say the name. That reminds me, chat. We discussed Tim Pool on the Reaction podcast with Samuel Cedar and helped build up so much. Come check out the Reaction podcast. This is this episode 8 with Samuel Cedar. Come check that out. We also have a new episode, Patreon exclusive on Candace Owens. My favorite thing about the Tim Pool song is that it literally doesn't actually drop till like 2 minutes in. What's up? Oh, thank you, dear. Theo brought me a beautiful fried egg. Look at these. Look at these. Actually, I'm out. Oh, so thank you, Theo. In 20 years, you'll be listening to Grateful Dead on repeat. It's inevitable. I mean,
did you know I left you there? Staring at the heartache in your soul. It's your heart.
Bro, drop! It's 2 minutes in!
To pieces. Into the world you're leaving for.
It's 2 minutes in! Can you get off the falsetto? Oh, cool. Maybe this isn't falsetto for him. Maybe this is his, like, deep into his range.
There's only one thing I think you should know. Is that now you can.
All right, I'm not trying to be mean. This is really problematic of me, but Tim Pool has micro penis vibes. I'm sorry. He just does. He just does. He just does.
Rest in peace, dear. I only ever wanted you to stay.
How? I thought it dropped. It never does. When does the actual music start? You've got 2 minutes and 35 seconds of a guitar string whine.
I only ever needed you. I only ever wanted you to stay.
Oh my God, they played a note.
I only ever needed you. I only ever needed you.
There's the fucking guitar plays 3 minutes in. And the drums 3 minutes. Oh my God, it's so bad. What in the fucking world? Can you imagine being a professional musician and you get hired into this guy's shit? This is why, you know, when we had Claire Valdez on the stream on Wednesday, I talked to her about one of my favorite programs in the New Deal. What is it called? The Federal Art Project, which was a program in the New Deal where they hired thousands of people to just do art. Isn't this fucking awesome? 10,000 artists were commissioned. Isn't that fucking cool? They made 400,000 easel paintings, murals, prints, posters, and renderings. Virtually free of government pressure to control subject matter, interpretation, or style. Isn't that fucking insane? How cool that is? 400,000 pieces of art were just funded. 10,000 artists and crafts workers were given jobs just to go around making community art. We're talking about sculptures. We're talking about wall paintings. We're talking about like look at how many people were in this shit. Look how many blue names. Because I don't think professional artists should be forced to work for Tim Pool. It's like so sad that Americans don't even know about this. Like, this is so fucking cool, man. When people talk about the New Deal, this is what they mean. I think a lot of people, when they trash the New Deal, they don't understand it. They really don't understand it. This is Eleanor Roosevelt at the Southside Community Arts Center in Chicago. The Roswell, New Mexico exhibits. Hundreds are receiving free instruction, drawing, painting, weaving, lithography, sculpture, etching, metalcraft, photography, costume illustration in Lenox Ave. Here's the free art class at Harlem Community Center. This is the new deal that you don't know about because, again, libertarians don't have any interest in teaching you about the real New Deal. They want to teach you about, yes, there were horrible political compromises that were racist, that were made, that we disavow, and we don't want them to be true. But the idea that, it was just racist and, you shouldn't care about it, that's just wrong. Here's one in Oklahoma City, Gold Beach, Oregon. This is so fucking cool, man. Such a massive reduction of what it actually was. Yeah, I mean, people like to lie so you don't know, right? Because it's about making what we are asking for smaller. Because if you don't know what the New Deal really was, then you don't know what we can achieve now, right? Why you always see me defending the New Deal from people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, which is pretty much everyone online. Can we get more wall murals that aren't fucking flags? Yes, well, that's what we got back in the day. Carl Reiner mentioned on Conan once how he got his start thanks to the WPA. Yeah, I know. Did you cover the Chinese security refusing to let Americans leave in China? Do you mean live? All right, I wanted to watch the Nick Shirley thing because it's funny as fuck.
But it is ominous that this medically stupid, he called you a foul name, is going to Cuba to manufacture propaganda for what I assume will be additional U.S. intervention. How do you respond to that?
Well, he's the same person who went to Cuba with Ilhan Omar's daughter to promote how it was taking.
How do you spell his name? Nick Shirley, like that, right?
Sorry, what was that? So Nick Shirley is the journalist of our generation. I mean, he's up for the Pulitzer, right?
He's the smartest conservative journalist.
The face of independent journalism.
Independent. Just say it really loud and in bold letters, and it doesn't need to mean that you're actually independent. You could actually be being paid by numerous right-wing oligarchs or groups that are trying to stoke racial tension in Minnesota.
Benevolent billionaires.
Yeah, but you're independent because there's no oversight and there's no refs. So just call yourself independent, like a lot of independent media seems to be doing these days. By the way, join themajorityreport.com. We are independent.
Remember when a bunch of liberals tried to you guys remember when liberals ran around giving credit to Glenn Beck? Liberals love Glenn Beck. You guys remember that? Okay, AI, you don't know what I'm talking about. What was the fuck? Who was it? Who was with, who the fuck was supporting Glenn Beck? Samantha Bee. That's right. Oh, God. Here we go. Oh, my God.
Welcome back to the show. Those of you who only read about me know that I'm an ultra-liberal harpy paid by Hillary to crap on everything decent in America. While those who actually watch the show are probably dismayed by how not true that is.
You don't say.
Smug tits, Democrats.
I never thought I'd be standing on a stage here asking people to vote for president.
Oh, fuck off. And you know the other thing that America has that Britain lacked? A butt ton of evangelical Christians. Thank God! Yeah, you heard that right! Scalia was by all accounts a nice guy with a wicked sense of humor.
I attack ideas, I don't attack people. And some very good people have some very bad ideas.
He's right. Good people do have bad ideas, but that's no reason to be a dick. So, Mitch McConnell, I take it back. You are not a dildo. Your ideas are a dildo. I happen to have lots of conservative friends, and this holiday, I made one more.
If you haven't heard, Glenn Beck is acting really weird. No, not really weird like before, with his overheated rants on Fox.
Hang on, haven't I seen this movie before?
But weird like reaching out to the lamestream media to apologize for his previous weirdness. Weird like going so far as to agree to talk with the shrill, foul-mouthed host of a liberal bitch fest. Yes, that's you, lady. So in the holiday spirit of peace, love, and reconciliation, Glenn and I put on our Christmas sweaters and got to work on healing the nation.
This kind of shit, this kind of garbage. By the way, Chad, I just realized something. We're 3.5 hours into the stream, but I forgot to shill. Please support the stream by subscribing. I'll stop playing this video if you subscribe. I brought that up just because Democrats have been trying to kiss and suck the dicks of Republicans for fucking 10 years. How's it working out?
I guess Nick has his
Thank you,
panties in the
gifters.
bunch
Nobody gifted.
because
We're gonna go back and start watching that again soon.
he's being called stupid.
Well, so Nick went to Cuba, and Hasan said some things about him, which people can adjudicate for themselves. Glenn Beck is going to repeat them here, and Glenn Beck is bringing these comments to Nick Shirley's attention.
Yeah, well, I think Cuba's had 60 years to figure something out, and for 60 years
Cuba's
they've
had
been
60
underneath
years
this
to
communist
figure
regime, and they
something
haven't
out.
figured it out.
They
I
haven't
wonder how
figured
long
it
it's
out.
going to take for me or you to figure something.
They haven't figured out how a country of a few million people could stand up to a 300 million superpower that's right off their shores and dedicated to destroying them through every means necessary. Actually, I'd say holding the U.S. off for that amount of time is truly impressive. 60-year siege.
Out if we've been facing the same problem for 60 years.
Hold on.
Yeah, buddy, thin ice.
I could fix Cuba in 1 week.
I think it might take a lot of people a different amount of time to figure something out than Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley
oh my God, Tom, thank you.
might need some extra time.
I don't think Nick Shirley could figure out which is the closet and which is the door behind him.
Yeah.
Hype train.
And they're literally 90 miles away from the United States, and they've decided to be our enemy for so long. And now the United States is even offering support, it looks like, and it seems like they've rejected that support.
Yeah, it's all bullshit.
So I don't know if you know who, I'm sure you do, Hasan Piker is. But he responded to you and said, I obviously don't believe this even a little bit. This is your last post.
Is Glenn Beck Hare Krishna?
Went to Cuba to
I was about to say, he is missing the red scarf, but he's dressed like Trump as a doctor healing everybody.
Yeah.
He really looks like a cult member. I mean, or just a part of the Righteous Gemstones cast. He's getting baptized as an adult.
believe this even a little bit. This is your last. But he responded to you and says, I obviously don't believe this even a little bit. This is your last post. That went to Cuba to document the humanitarian crisis, blah, blah, blah. I don't even buy this a little bit. But it is ominous that this medically stupid, he called you a foul name, is going to Cuba to manufacture propaganda for what I assume will be additional U.S. intervention. How do you respond to that?
Well, he's the same person who went to Cuba with Ilhan Omar's daughter to promote how it was taking communism inside of
Somali.
Cuba.
Sorry, what was that?
He went with Somali. Remember, I hate those. I hate those people.
His daughter to promote how it was taking communism inside of Cuba. So he actually went on a paid trip from an organization to go to Cuba. Yet he
literally none of. Oh, chat, we got a hype trade going. Soviet Cranberry, thank you for the bits. Right now, chat, top sub gifter and the top bit donor get the hype trade conductor badge next to their name. We are dangerously close to 7,000 subs. And friendly reminder, we are currently being monitored. The sub count is being monitored. So anytime it falls below 7,000, every Zionist on the planet gets excited. So please consider supporting the stream by subscribing. At tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, there's also Amazon Prime. You can attach that to your Twitch account if you have Amazon Prime, and you get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. Super Fist Dandy, thank you for the gifties. Ezo Breezo, Cobb Like a Tom, Spiral. Thank you all for supporting the stream. You guys are gals and non-binary pals. You are the best. Jaeger Larson, thank you so much. Now, the thing about Nick Shirley is I'm not even sure he's literate. And I know that there's a lot of lefties out there that are like, Mike, don't be mean. Don't bully him. Absolutely, we're going to bully him. This guy should be in a adult rehabilitation facility so he learns how to read. Mandatory literacy program. The idea that Hasan went on a paid trip, that's just blatant slander, and there's no evidence for it whatsoever. He's just making a defamatory statement that Hasan was paid. I can tell you right now that we're not paid. When I get Claire Valdez on my stream, I'm losing money. Like, when I bring on Claire Valdez, I'm losing money. First of all, I give her money out of my own pocket. I tell you guys to donate to her instead of giving to me, right? I'm taking money from my own support network and pushing it towards her. Why? Because I believe in the shit. And then about 500 people don't like when I do interviews at all, and they leave. Like, if Mike from PA, if I'm doing an interview with someone, if I'm having a conversation with somebody one-on-one, 500 people are like, oh, Mike's not looking at the chat right now, so I'm leaving. Like that is an objective measurement of what happened. And it happens to Hasan too. He loses 5,000 people when he does an interview. Why? I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't get it either. But the point is that like we literally are giving shit up and it's not that big a deal. Boo-hoo. I'm just pointing out that the idea that we're doing this for money is insane. We're doing it because we believe in the causes that we're fighting for. Bro, you don't look at chat anyway? I just looked at your chat, Alpaca Pete, motherfucker. Take a 10-minute break to realize that you shouldn't talk shit.
Oh, I saw with my own 2 eyes, and he thought it's still a good idea to promote communism and socialism inside of the country.
International audience, dog. Some people don't care about local U.S. elections.
That is letting their children starve.
We didn't watch the Gabor discussion, actually.
They don't even have access to freedom of speech inside this country, yet he still wants to promote that. And so he's going to call me stupid. Meanwhile, he's seeing what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people suffer. I'm seeing a civilization that is depressed, has no hope left in their eyes, and yet he's still advocating for more of that.
So, yeah.
I take that, Hasan.
He called you stupid. How do you respond to that? I see with my own 2 eyes that he's wrong.
I just feel bad. I just straight up feel bad because Nick Shirley reminds me. I always say
feel the part of you that feels bad. Take the part of you that feels bad and lock them away. Keep that person safe. Keep that part of you safe. You'll let them out eventually in the future. But you need to divide the part of you that feels bad for Nick Shirley and put that safely away, ensconced in a tall tower of your mind. These motherfuckers need to be bullied. They need to be mocked. Save your empathy for someone who has empathy themselves.
Reminds me of like Single D Ed from Ed Netty. Like and so I honestly just do not want to discourage any and this is going to sound like an insult, and I swear I mean it legitimately. I do not want to discourage any disabled people from like creating content online. I just do not agree with the kind of content that Nick Shirley creates. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I mean, at the very least, can you scrape the peanut butter off the roof of your mouth?
I mean, I just think you get him to talk. I just think this is what I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with the guy. I think this is what you get when you have a craven content view clicks only care, like someone only cares about content views and clicks to his content. YouTuber with no charisma talking about topics that he doesn't fully understand. Like he just fell into this. He wasn't always I struggle to even use the term political content creator because while he's creating political content, he's covering things he doesn't understand, and nor does he even care to understand. I don't even mean like he's got it wrong because he's a conservative. That's part of why I don't like it. But he doesn't even know what the conservative positions on this stuff are because he doesn't care enough to even learn about politics at all. He's just dumb on the topics he's talking about because he's a guy who just cares about views and clicks and fell into this and wants to make a living out of it.
Okay, so that reminds me, actually, he's also beefing with Candace Owens. So I got all the drama. So, like, he's beefing with Candace Owens, and Candace Owens is, like, fed-jacketing him and trying to imply, I'm not trying to say in a legally actionable way, that he's, like, a CIA plant, that he might only be pretending to be like that, and that, like, he was sent as, like, a deep state asset to Cuba to destabilize the regime. Like, that's why he was there at the same time that people were saying they were engaging in some kind of, like, spying operation. Now, I don't believe that because like if he's just pretending, he's very sophisticated. He's very
deep undercover. He's gonna start talking in like a posh British accent and realize he's a Rhodes Scholar. All this.
You believe the opposite of me? Interesting.
This is Mission Impossible. Yeah. So like she's been like implying that maybe he like not only getting funded by billionaires, but he has some like institutional backing. Wink, wink.
They don't even have access to free speech in this country. I kind of slipped into Elon Musk there, but like,
he's Kaiser saying.
How do you have access to free speech? It's not a commodity or a service, my guy. You get this. They don't need to log in to get their access to the free speech portion of their day.
I mean, like, listen, look at how he just uses like the buzzwords of like, he didn't say like, civil society in Cuba or something like that. He said civilization in Cuba. It's like, right, because he overhears like Elon Musk and all his right-wing heroes saying the word civilization all the time. And so he goes, I'm going to use that too, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot.
I saw communism with my own two eyes. I got one eye, two ears.
I think, like, ultimately, yes, they're stupid as fuck. Most Nazis are stupid, but a stupid hand could still crack your fucking skull. And in fact, you being comfortable with the idea that your opposition is stupid is when you're in the most danger, because you are now underestimating them. Nick Shirley is a dumb piece of shit, and we should say it and laugh at him and scream from the rooftop how dumb he is. We should also be unsparing in our energy to destroy him. All right, I want to show you the Gabor Mate. I want to do the Gabor Mate thing. Actually, no. It's Friday. We're going to watch some shit that you guys hate. You're going to learn something, goddammit. This is a deep cut. When I was debating Vosh 5 years ago about urban policy from a left-wing perspective, I talked about annexation of suburban areas and how many suburban areas acted as tax enclaves. An example of that would be the city of Beverly Hills in Los Angeles is a state it's a city that's fully contained by Los Angeles. It's completely ringed by, so you have a city within Los Angeles. Why did Beverly Hills secede from Los Angeles? So that the high income motherfuckers didn't have to pay taxes for the city's services.
As someone who grew up and went to school in the inner city, it always bothered me to hear about rich suburbs that had better funded schools, better maintained park systems, more modern infrastructure. I rarely had reason to go to these places, but when I did, the contrast was pretty jarring. And as I grew into adulthood, it just made me more resentful. Why is it that there are so many central cities and suburbs that struggle to provide the basics alongside wealthy suburban enclaves that provide top-tier everything, just as a matter of course? Well, recently I got skeeted at on
this is something that when I debated Vosh on this point, I was trying to let him understand that yes, infrastructurally, suburbs are more expensive. Like, it takes a lot more infrastructure spending to support a suburb. That is true. But do you know where the infrastructure spending comes from? Federal government! It's free fucking money. So suburbanites are not paying the cost of the infrastructure. And neither are cities, by the way. They are getting that money from the federal government. So yes, we as a collective are subsidizing Ponzi scheme that is suburbs, but the suburbs themselves just exist on that subsidy. And therefore, by annexing them, we would actually get more money and more ability to tax. That's why annexing suburbs is a good idea.
Sky. Topic suggestion from Robert Manduka. Top 10 most egregious municipal tax havens in the U.S. And honestly, I've had an idea like this on my list for a while, including a couple of research papers to dig into. This is so good.
This is why I like City Nerd. Even though City Nerd probably is like pretty significantly to my right. The reason why I like the guy is that a lot of these ideas are actually applicable to the left as well. Even if he doesn't have, his solutions are way too small and too tinkery for me. I want more radical, full-throated, expropriations and things like that. I hate this dude's voice. Neurotypical detected. Neurotypicals detected. Neurotypicals detected. Neurotypicals detected. This voice is like butter for us. We love this voice.
And coincidentally, the lead author on one of the papers is also named Robert Manduka. Okay, it's the same guy. But I'm not going to do this top 10 style because the paper itself and the findings are really so much more interesting. First, why is this so important? Well, in the US, there are a lot of services that are administered at the federal and state level, but things like K-12 education, law enforcement, public housing, parks, sanitation, usually provided by individual cities. And they're kind of on their own. The paper, which I'll introduce in a minute, points out that most federal systems in other wealthy nations feature lots of interjurisdictional redistribution to smooth out the disparity in.
Do you see that? Interjurisdictional jurisdictional redistribution. That's why I was calling for the annexation of suburbs in that debate over sewer socialism. Like, what's so funny is you can go back to those old conversations I had, and all these points I made had so much depth, and there's so much knowledge behind them. And unfortunately, online, nobody cares about this shit. So unfortunately, you're stuck with me. I'm the only one. So you could do your cognitive offloading to me, and I will slowly make you more intelligent by actually showing you the real evidence.
Sources between different localities. But in the U.S.,
Mike, I have a genuine question. Aren't suburbs financial black holes that cost the city more than they put in due to large water pipe infrastructure spread out over a larger area that pay less taxes? Doesn't the math mean that annexation will doom a city? I'm not educated on this fully, Mike. Okay, the answer to that is no. And the reason why the answer to that is no is because you're talking about, you're conflating a lot of things that sound correct, but are actually not fiscally correct. And the reason why is because the taxation and the subsidies for things like road infrastructure, water infrastructure, that is paid from the federal and state level. But things like property taxes and other local sources of revenue, that would then be available for the city to be able to pay for itself. So you're talking about, you're talking about like, are suburbs a good idea in general? The answer is no. We should be focusing more for density. When we're talking about actually how to physically operate a city, everyone that is in proximity, and we're also talking about enclaves as well as suburbs, right? And there's different types of suburbs, right? Like the further out you get, then there is a fiscal event horizon where it doesn't make any sense anymore, right? But the answer is yes, we want the people that have high incomes to be taxed by the city they live in.
Local governments have to generate a much larger portion of their revenue from taxes and fees that are levied from within their own boundaries. So take how this plays out in terms of school districts.
Okay, listen to what he just said. This is so important. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Redistribution, usually provided by individual cities, administered at the federal and state level. But things like K-12 education, law enforcement, public housing, parks, sanitation, usually provided by individual cities. And they're kind of on their own. The paper, which I'll introduce in a minute, points out that most federal systems in other wealthy nations feature lots of interjurisdictional redistribution to smooth out the disparity in resources between different localities. But in the US, local governments have to generate a much larger portion of their revenue from taxes and fees that are levied from within their own boundaries. So take how this plays out in terms of school districts. You'll often hear that suburbs have quote unquote better schools. Well, debatable. But in as much as it's true, it's not really because people in the suburbs are more upstanding or hardworking or smarter. It's because the jurisdiction is comprised of people who saw fit to take their wealth and move to an affluent enclave with a high per capita tax base and consequently better funded schools. Note that I have not yet made a video about the urbanism of public school systems, but just be warned, I have takes. Like, I might argue that if you're in a district that's well-funded, but also insulated from socioeconomic diversity, you might end up with marginally better test scores, but a much, much worse developmental experience. Hey, all of my opinions are not going to be popular, but I can live with that. Anyway.
Oh, wow, he just cited Beverly Hills as the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Are you arguing for amalgamation? We did that here decades ago, and it's led to endlessly elected conservatives who cater to suburban interests. It depends on exactly how you do it, right? Right? It depends on how you do it. And obviously, you have to do... There is definitely a political risk that is involved with democracy. Right? If you want to understand, my takes are, quite frankly, we need less in the way of layers of government. We've got too many layers of government. I would knock out the state level completely. I don't think we should have state government at all. Things should be designed rationally based on the geography and the changing. It should be set by a more rational way, as opposed to arbitrary state boundaries, which most of the time they're just straight lines because they're not based on anything. They're not actually divisions of geography or regionalism or municipalities, it is just like right angles and straight lines because they were drawing lines on a map.
Here's the paper I want to talk about. It's Tax-Based Fragmentation as a Dimension of Metropolitan Inequality by Manduka, Highsmith, and Wagoner, published this year in the journal Socioeconomic Review, linked down in the description as well. The paper lays out the case for why all this matters. The ability of local governments to provide critical services is determined by taxable wealth that's contained within contested municipal boundaries, and the jurisdictional splintering and economic segregation that are so pervasive.
That's actually not true. We have a law that requires borders to be based on geography. They may look straight, but if you zoom in, they are very jagged. They're not jagged, bro. They're not jagged. You think we have 4 quarters because that's where there's some sort of significant difference between each quarter of the 4 corners? My Lord in heaven, save me.
In U.S. metro areas, and the lack of interjurisdictional reallocation I mentioned earlier, combined to create a situation that the authors call tax-based fragmentation, which is upstream of all kinds of inequities in our urban areas. So there are all kinds of further avenues for study on something like this, but I really like the focus here. It's taxable property wealth, which means what we're looking at is the jurisdictional distribution of fiscal resources. So while it's related to other concepts like spatial segregation, which can manifest in neighborhoods within the same jurisdiction and overall tax base, and jurisdictional fragmentation, which is a broader concept that also encompasses questions of governance and spending priorities, tax-based fragmentation is its own distinct and specific thing. The legal geographic segregation of a tax base away from those of neighboring communities.
Detroit, Michigan, Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan. So the reason why Detroit is all fucking all these you see how there's all these like green patches? This was probably looked very similar to Grosse Pointe at one point, but all of these houses became worthless, and so they were demolished. So you're seeing all these green patches. They probably were very similarly as dense as Grosse Pointe, but all of this Detroit, all these spaces in Detroit became so worthless that the houses were just abandoned.
So here's what they did. They wanted to come up with a measure for tax base relative to the population for every jurisdiction in the US. And since the overwhelming majority of local revenue comes from property taxes, what they did was assemble a database of appraised values for all parcels in the US and assign each parcel to the smallest general purpose local government containing it that has the independent power to raise property taxes. Generally, the municipality or town for incorporated places and the county for unincorporated places. Then, to do the fragmentation analysis, they created a couple of metrics, and as I explain these, I'm going to be sharing the web tool they created to go with the paper.
Oh, Camden. Now, you think Philadelphia's rough. Camden is not great, folks.
Link it down in the description. The first metric is the fiscal capacity ratio, or FCR, which measures the per capita taxable resources available to each jurisdiction relative to the metro area wide number. So, for example, the taxable value...
This is really important. So basically what you'll find is actually that people in cities, poor people pay higher taxes for the same value, and they get much worse services. That's why American inner cities suck, because why would you move somewhere that you pay higher taxes and you get less out of it?
Per capita of $387,279 for Winnetka, Illinois is 3.83 times that of the Chicago metro area as a whole.
Jesus Christ! Oh my God. $400,000 taxable value per capita? Oh my God.
The other metric is a metro area-wide measure, the tax-based fragmentation quotient, or TFQ, which measures the share of each metropolitan area's total property tax base that would need to shift across local jurisdictional borders, say suburban city limits, in order for all municipalities within the metropolitan area to have the same tax base per capita. We can illustrate all of this with Detroit. The Detroit metro
Wow.
area is the #1 most tax-based fragmented metro area
Wow, you
over
don't
a million,
say.
with a TFQ
Wow, I
of
can't believe it.
0.235, meaning 23.5%.
Wow, I can't believe that Detroit is the most fragmented tax base in the entire country. Wow, you don't say.
Of the metro area's total taxable property would have to shift across jurisdictional lines in order to equalize the overall tax base per capita. You can see this just in the fact that the core city itself has a tax base of just over $25,000 per capita, compared to a metro area-wide number of around $82,000. So Detroit has just 31% the fiscal capacity that the overall region does, and you can see that several of the distant suburbs have a fiscal capacity multiple times that of the region. I didn't really want to get into a whole thing about white flight in this video because I think it oversimplifies the dynamic, but there's no doubt it's a big consideration. So I'll just quote from the paper. Both historically and in the present, racial antagonism has been a central driver of local government fragmentation as white residents depart diverse cities and use incorporation and zoning law to create new municipalities that will not have to share space, funding, or services with poorer residents of color. Multiple citations. And just to bookend this metric, here's the major metro
Jesus
area with
Christ.
the least tax-based fragmentation, none in fact. Honolulu with a TFQ of exactly 0. And this is because there's only one local jurisdiction, the County of Honolulu, aka the island of Oahu. One consolidated city-county government providing all municipal
Wow.
services for the whole island.
Man,
now,
that
this isn't
sounds-
saying wealth and poverty aren't concentrated in particular geographic places on the island. Of course they are, but the key thing is they all share one tax base and they all participate in its benefits. Anyway, exploring the data with the map tool is eye-opening
damn,
and
dude,
kind
this
of
is
fun,
cool.
so go explore your own metro area and see how things play out. By the way, Lexington, Kentucky, also one of the lowest tax-based fragmentation quotients in the US. So if you want to hear more about the benefits of a consolidated city-county government and a strong urban services boundary, I've got a recent video on that. Probably an even more interesting use
Really
of the map
interesting.
is to go looking for the cities with the highest and the lowest fiscal capacity ratios. The authors of the paper use a cut point of 0.33, or below 1/3 of the metro area wide average, to identify what they call fiscally impoverished jurisdictions. These are usually not the central city, but Detroit is a huge exception and the largest
Hey,
jurisdiction.
wow, I can't
in this
believe
category.
Detroit and
The paper
Newark.
mentions interesting
Wow.
examples, including Brooklyn, Illinois. Quoting from the paper, an 8 square block village of 607 residents, 94% of whom are black, located just across the Mississippi River from St. Louis. The town was settled in the 1820s by 11 families who fled enslavement in Missouri. It is believed to be the oldest town founded by black Americans. Anyway, cities with the lowest FCRs
That
are
sounds about
listed in
right.
the paper, and you can browse the map itself. I'd encourage you to consider the moral dimension of cordoning people into jurisdictions where economic struggle and underfunded public services create a vicious cycle of self-fulfilling prophecy. Just doesn't seem ideal. Okay, in a second, we're going to look at a different group of
I think
outliers.
one of the things that's really interesting is looking at the city borders of America's largest cities in general, right? When you look at a map, you're oftentimes looking at a map of roads. You're not looking at a map of municipal power. And if you saw that pockmarked, horrible bullshit, you would realize just how unfair this system is.
The cities with the highest fiscal capacity ratios, and see if you can guess what some of those
Yeah, sure.
cities are. Connect on the apps to keep up with my whereabouts. I do have travel coming up pretty much every month through the end of the year, so follow to get.
What an important video this is. What an actually important video. And this is one of those things that, as a sewer socialist, as somebody who's been arguing about this stuff for a long time, a lot of America's problems are structural and need to be reformed. And I kind of worry that a lot of people that are left don't realize just how vitally important fixing this type of shit is and how it should be done relatively quickly.
Sneak peeks of upcoming city visit content. More in-person events are happening. Austin for sure in early September, and I will probably do a 1-week pre-sale for patrons for this one. Stay tuned. Before we get to this last bit, I want to make one more case for why all this stuff actually matters. I found this passage from the paper super compelling. We find that resource-poor municipalities source a greater percentage of their budgets from intergovernmental transfers, user charges, fines, and forfeitures as compared to other municipalities in the same state and metropolitan area.
So they
in other
steal
words,
wealth.
cities with low fiscal capacity make up the difference by tapping revenue sources that are much more regressive and extractive. So the concern is not just the low tax base itself, it's the vicious cycle that it sets into motion. Okay, so the other end of the spectrum is cities with an extraordinarily high level of taxable property wealth per capita. The authors designate cities with a fiscal capacity ratio of 3.0 or higher, meaning at least 3 times the tax base per capita of the surrounding metro area, as what they call municipal tax havens. Now, these can be places like Lake Buena Vista, Florida, which has a huge amount of taxable property but very few residents. But more often we're talking about wealthy enclaves where the residents can benefit from high levels of infrastructure and services while walling themselves off from the parts of society they'd prefer not to cooperate or probably interact with. There are some super interesting small communities that are among the very highest in terms of FCR. I'll leave you to explore those on your own, but since it would be out of character for this channel to not include some sort of ranked list, I'm going to give you the 10 highest population cities with an FCR over 3.0, starting with number 10, East Hampton, New York.
Wow, it's exactly where you think it is. The Hamptons. Wow. Oh my God, I can't believe
Paramus,
it.
New Jersey, a little surprising, but just barely over 3. Beverly Hills, California, passes the smell test. Manhattan Beach, California at number 7. La Quinta in California's Coachella Valley, coming strong with the country club property values. 5, Coral Gables, Florida, which I ground truthed in my Miami video and doesn't surprise me to see on this list. Southampton, New York, one of many Hamptons over the 3.0 threshold. Greenwich, Connecticut, technically part of the Bridgeport-Stamford metro area. Miami Beach, also ground truthed and a slam dunk to make this list. And the highest population city with a fiscal capacity ratio over 3.0. Newport Beach, California,
okay.
Population close to 100,000 and an FCR over 4. Southern California, never change. So a thing I heard from time to time in planning school and then later in the profession itself is also mentioned in the paper. The fact that metro areas are sliced into different jurisdictions that have different socioeconomic characteristics and different tax regimes and that provide differing levels of public service is actually...
Honestly, Wisconsin doesn't look too bad. Wisconsin doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's bad compared to perfect, but compared to like other places.
Virtue. It gives people the freedom to, quote unquote, vote with their feet to select their preferred bundle of taxes and services. I heard this phrase, vote with their feet, more time.
Yeah, well, you select a place with low taxes and high services, which means you move with other wealthy people. And therefore the barrier is, can you afford to buy into the neighborhood? That's exactly what it is.
Than I can count, but I think what I've finally come around to believing is that what people are really doing is voting with their dollars, which I don't think of as a virtue, but probably is consistent with the times we live in. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons for your direct.
What an important video. Like, there's sometimes when we'll watch a video and obviously like you guys are not that hyped about this because why would you be? But this is one of those videos where it's like, damn, this is a real, I'm gonna like come back to this video a lot. I'm going to be looking at this shit a lot because this is really important. These are the Hamptons, chat. If you don't know what the Hamptons are, it's a part of Long Island where the richest of the rich go. East Hampton, taxable value per capita, $1.15 million. Oh my God. Wow. That's how do I explain that? Pennsylvania has so many jurisdictions, it's crazy. And by the way, you can see You can see all like Pennsylvania has a bunch of a bunch of dense towns, and they're all like this. Oh my God, dude. You can see it's like pockmarks. Oh my God, that's crazy. Pittsburgh is not so bad, although Wilkinsburg is like an example of it, right? This is a traditionally black community, and as you can see, it's a lot worse off than Pittsburgh itself. There's a reason why Pittsburgh is like much more functional than most other cities in America. Is because it's not that bad. I want to go check out Erie. Yeah, that makes sense. Of course. I bet you the valley is probably interesting. Oh, here we go. Okay, what am I laughing at? Allentown is like one of the largest cities in Pennsylvania, the third largest city in Pennsylvania. And then this is like Nazareth. This is where white people live. Oh my God, Hanover Township. Jesus Christ, dude. 408,000. Allentown 60. That's crazy. Oh, this is one of my favorites. The Allentown penis. The Allentown penis. I think the city of Allentown comes out like here, and it appears to be a phallus that's been broken. And then it's gonna come over around here, and then okay, there you go. Oh, fuck me. Wow. This is really interesting for me and me alone. Like even this, right? Like when we're talking about like Bethlehem, and like you have all this area around Hellertown, twice as wealthy. And Hellertown is not a big town. That's a small town. Damn, man. That's crazy. Hazleton? Wow. Wow. That's Conshohocken. West Conshohocken. So much richer than Conshohocken. That's so interesting. What else did I want to check out? Rose Valley. No. Wow, that's crazy. Spring Garden versus York. God damn, dude. This is such a good... Wow, this exposes a lot of fucking... the way racism works in America. That's crazy. Here's Lancaster, as I say. Lancaster Township, which is non-contiguous. Amazing. Anyway, really great video. Awesome video. Really important policy point that no one cares about, but unfortunately results in everything sucking.
Over the past week, a roadside gallows on M28 just east of Marquette has sparked some strong reaction in the local community and online. And last night we told you that local authorities were aware of that installation, calling it disturbing, but we were still left with questions about who built it and why. Tonight, my UP's Skylar Perkins has the answer.
Sometime in the past week, this Newson gallows showed up here in Chocolate Township. Today, we went out to find the man who built it to ask why.
But we definitely didn't have a straightforward path to get to him. The installation between the two scenic lookouts and Lake and Land was on the property of Pagano Builders, which Laura shows as being owned by Thomas Pagano Jr. But no one was there when we looked around. In any case, it gave us a minute to get a good look at the thing and hear how people in the area were reacting to it.
Can I ask what you think about this? I'm a reporter with the news in town.
Okay, I didn't expect this, but my answer is not going to be what people might think.
I've considered burning it down, but it's too dry.
Do I think it's racist? Probably. But here's the thing. I think he believes that the government is screwing him over in some way, and his answer is to hang them, which that's the worst thing you can do, is kill somebody.
Another neighbor told us it was Tom who built it and pointed us to where he lived, but when we got there, someone else told us he was gone fishing. However, she said he still may not be far from shore, and we might still be able to contact him through his YouTube live stream.
These people that try to contact you, they have so much, I don't know, they need to be validated so bad.
It really didn't seem to be going well until...
And he's streaming on YouTube. And
we've got a local news stream sniper!
He's saying I should meet him out at the second turnoff to get on his boat. We'll see how that goes. How's it going, Tom?
They got a pontoon?
Do you mind if I climb on?
Yeah, getting paid to come on, man.
And after all that, finally, there he was.
I am Thomas Pagano, and I'm an agitator.
who's crazy enough to put something like that outside and put their business name right next to it? This fucking guy is, all right?
While on the boat, we talked for over an hour, telling us he's a 45-year-old builder, ex-convict, former barber, avid live streamer, and said the gallows are not meant to be a racial statement, but instead essentially one about inaction from people in power in a world so full of suffering.
There's too many lots of things. There's too much government overspending. We got pedophiles and deviants running the show, and it ain't right, period. It ain't about black and white. It's about we the people being treated.
The problem with this, like, obviously I agree with this guy, right? Like, and he's clearly not very politically aware. And this is like the kind of general radicalization that is occurring where people don't have an idea of why things are the way they are. And he is primed for a fascist movement. And maybe if we were effective, a socialist movement could get somebody like this, but probably not. When I see a petite bourgeois white man, you know, blaming government overspending, and it's like, come on.
Treated fairly and having a say, and them not just running away with the ball and saying, you elected us, you know, you elected us. No.
But I mean, maybe this guy could be persuaded with the right, you know, with the right Graham Plattner style candidate.
I agree with what's going on. A lot of people don't. That's why everything's in turmoil.
Of course, we talked for a while, so we can't fit everything we talked about in this story, but he did say he was calling people back to discuss the installation when they left him a message on his business line.
That's a lot of the reason I put that up, to get people to think about some real shit.
In Chocolate Township, I'm Skylar Perkins for MyUP News.
All right, very good. Thank you, Skylar.
Upper
Tracking
Peninsula
them down.
local
Some
news,
audacious
man.
reporting there. In Dickinson County, the Iron...
We got some gumshoe reporters up there. All right, chat. Well, it is Friday, which means a couple things. The first is I'm about to go do some gaming streaming. Who wants to do some gaming streaming? All right, I'm going to do some gaming streaming on Vio's channel. We're going to be playing Subnautica 2. So gaming chatters in. And then tonight is Discord, where we will be watching 1995 classic film Heat.
He's here. I can feel it.
Pacino!
You search for the scent of your prey, and then you hunt them down. That's the only thing you're committed to.
It keeps me sharp, on the edge, where I gotta be.
De Niro!
You want to be making moves on the street? Allow nothing to be in your life that you cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you spot the heat around the corner. My life's a disaster zone because I spend all my time chasing guys like you around the block. I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best, trying to stop guys like me.
You've been walking through our life dead.
All I am is what I'm going after.
From The Godfather to Scent of a Woman.
What do we got?
From Raging Bull to Goodfellas.
Assume they got our phones, assume they got our houses, assume they got us.
Their performances have created a legacy of landmark films.
I want full surveillance. That's 24 hours, round the clock. We never close, open 7 days a week.
Now, for the first time, America's two most electrifying actors collide.
With this guy, there's more cheap you should pass. The bank is worth the risk.
Val Kilmer!
You should take it down.
12.2 million.
You're up. This crew is good.
It ain't worth the risks you take, like in risk versus reward, baby.
You're fugitive number one with a bullet. I'm double the worst trouble you ever had. If I'm there and I gotta put you away, I won't like it. But I'll tell you, you are going down. What if you do got me boxed in and I gotta put you down? Because no matter what, you will not get in my way. I will not hesitate for a second.
Al Pacino.
Was that Theron? Yes! Jeremy Piven, the most talentless hack of all time. Holy shit.
Heat.
Wow. So we're going to be watching one of the most amazing films of the 90s. Heat. Over on the Discord. We do that at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific in the Discord, which I'm linking now. And with that, I'm headed over to Vio's channel to do some Mike from PA Gaming. Mike from PA Gaming, we are going to be playing Subnautica 2. Don't forget the reaction podcast, all the other links. You'll see me around the corner. I might be posting more stuff. We're going to have another episode this weekend. I think we're doing Stefan Molyneux for all you old heads. So thank you so much for all the support. I'll see you all out there. Solidarity forever, my friends. And stay safe.